Story 1. I found my Bill's Reddit account and I'm genuinely terrified for my family. First and foremost, I will not be sharing Bill's username. I know this will cause most people to call this post fake, but his account has a lot of private information about many members of my family, including what are essentially dox bins and other private info. He does not know I know about this account, and I don't want anyone to go to his account to leave comments or message him. I'm 21F. My sister, Jane 28F, has been with John, 27M, for 2 years. I found his account totally randomly. I Googled his name as he's a journalist and found a Reddit account with the same name. Think John_Doe_dead_1997. I clicked on it and found tons of Reddit posts ranting about his girlfriend's family, mainly her little sister. At first I thought I just came across a random, disturbed individual, but clicking on the posts revealed more. Both my sister and I have unique names, not super rare but uncommon enough that they're noticeable in a list of names, and neither of us have met anyone with the same names as us. Plus, our surnames aren't super basic either. Think Aurora Fernsby, fake, but similar name to myself. He also mentions enough personal details for it to be undeniably him. I wouldn't be writing this unless I was 99% sure. The posts are all either posted to vent rant subs or straight to his Reddit page. They all have 0, 3 upvotes and a few comments spread across, from what I can tell to be, 100 posts. They're all mostly complaining about Jane, me, or our mother. The most concerning post is about me, though. I have a varied past with men, mainly influenced by SA. I'm in therapy, but it has made me more weary around men I don't know. This apparently enrages John. In this post, he details out how he plans to offer to drive me home next I visit them, but instead of taking me home, he'll detour and take the scenic route through the country lanes in our town. He says he wants to make me afraid enough that I'll do something to her, but after 15 or so minutes, he'll turn around and drive me home, therefore showing me that not all men are creeps and want to hurt her. His logic seems to be that since he acted weird, but didn't hurt me, it should click in her brain that not all men are bad. The post is very long, like scrolling down for 15 seconds long, but he rants about how it's unfair that I flinch around him when he makes big gestures or yells at the TV, because he'd never do anything. He says he can fix me more than my therapist. A lot of the post is weird incel-y talking points. I was bawling reading the whole thing. There is one comment telling him to get help, but John just responds, "I don't need help, she does." His comment history is also concerning, a lot of weird incel talking points, which doesn't make sense as he has a girlfriend. I'm not super versed in incel ideology. A lot of stuff about SA, women's roles in relationship society, other races/ethnicities/religions/etc. I'm terrified of John. We weren't close before, but we didn't hate each other. To me, he was just a grown man with vastly different interests, and we would never mesh cleanly. Now, I don't know what to think. My mind is frazzled. I'm going to tell my sister, but I don't know how. I have screenshots of everything, links, etc. I just don't know how to lay it all out. Also, I need coping mechanisms. I'm in a constant state of pre-panic attack. I can feel it in my chest, but it's not tipping over into a full panic attack, which is making me genuinely crazy. Sorry for the long post. Thanks in advance. Edit. As of 2 hours ago, I made my mom and uncle aware of what I've found. Every screenshot, screen recording, and link. My sister is currently on a work trip, so we're waiting for her to come back in 2 days. His account is still up as of 20 minutes ago. Thanks for all your advice. Mom, Uncle, and I are figuring out the best way to tell my sister. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter, "Ooh, I did not want to be the first comment here. This is so much to unpack. Do you think your sister will believe you? Talk to your parents' family first. They should hear about your fear before they hear from your sister that you're talking shit. Is your sister safe? I have no clue what else to say other than I'm going to come back in case anyone has coping mechanisms for your pre-panic attack thing. I'm experiencing the same thing, and it's also driving me insane. Pre-panic attack is a good way to describe it. I've been struggling with it for years, but there's no medical term for it, so thanks for giving it a name. OOP, is your sister safe? This is why I want to tell her ASAP, because I don't know. Not anymore, anyway. They seem happy together, but now I'm rethinking everything. Thanks for your advice. Commenter: why is he so obsessed with you? He has a GF and prefers to vent about you. Are you that close to him? He is not in a normal place mentally. Show the text to your sister and mother. He can be abusive to your sister. OP. We're not close. I live closer to my sister than any of our family, so I see him fairly often. But I never go to see him. He's usually just there, which is fair because it's his home too. But I never go with the reason of hanging out with John, just my sister. We're not close. We don't have much in common, but get along well enough. I had no interest in being his friend or anything before for many obvious reasons, but especially now. I have no idea why he's so obsessed with me. It's freaking me out. Commenter: how does he know so much about your trauma? Who told him? That's a very important question to solve beforehand. OOP. Last year, when I was SA'd by my now ex, I ended up calling John to pick me up because my ex lived in a different city and was supposed to give me a ride back. I had a breakdown in his car and told him what happened. I hadn't intended to tell anybody about what happened, but I couldn't keep it in. Also, my sister and I both witnessed abuse from our father, which I'm sure she told John about, and he, correctly, assumed I was also affected. Commenter: does this mean your parents aren't safe advocates in this situation? OOP. No, not at all. I'm planning on telling Mum, too. The no telling anyone about the SA comment was more of a spur-of-the-moment traumatized and mortified 19-year-old OOP response to a troll, included because she had a great response. But I don't think all men are evil. John literally just projected that onto me. He wrote that assumption in a post where he detailed, graphically, how he wanted to make me fear for safety to fix me, because he's upset I have trauma and CPTSD. And I'm somehow as creepy as he is and terrifying? I would love a deep dive into how you can to that conclusion. Because reading some Reddit posts don't feel the same as what John is doing, planning to. Update post. November 13th, 2024. As I mentioned in my last post, I had made my mom and uncle aware of the situation. We all agreed that waiting for Jane to come home from a work trip to tell her was the best course of action. When she got back, we sat her down to explain everything. I showed her the screenshots, the posts, and walked her through everything John had said. She was quiet at first, just reading through the messages with this shocked look on her face. She started accusing me of overreacting or somehow getting the situation wrong. She said that maybe John was just venting and didn't actually mean any of it. She also suggested that I might be reading too much into his posts because of my past trauma. My mom and uncle tried to step in and back me up, but Jane wasn't having it. She kept saying that we were blowing things out of proportion and that we didn't understand John like she does. At this point, she was getting really upset, and we were all talking over each other. Then Jane said that I've always been distant from John and that maybe he felt uncomfortable around me because of how I act. At that point, I was done. I made it clear that if she decided to stay with him, I would have to limit my contact with both of them. My mom and uncle backed me up on this, and we all said that we couldn't trust John to be part of our lives anymore after seeing what he wrote. Jane stormed out of the house after that. She's barely spoken to me since, except for a couple of cold texts saying she needs to process the situation. On Monday, it's Wednesday today, Jane showed up at my door, completely unannounced. She looked like she hadn't slept, and the first thing she did was apologize. I was shocked because I wasn't expecting her to come around so quickly. She told me that after she left, she couldn't stop thinking about the posts, and she started going back over everything in her head. She said she told John about the situation, and when I went to check, all his stuff has been deleted. This annoyed me and my mom, who was on the phone, as we told Jane to keep quiet for safety reasons. Luckily, I have all the evidence saved. She said that John had blocked me on everything to preserve his career, and that he was super pissed off with me for stalking him. He even told my sister that the account wasn't him, rather someone at work who hates him. I obviously don't know everything that happened between them, but it's caused a rift between them. I've moved in with my uncle for the time being, as I was afraid of John showing up on these first few nights. We looked into legal options about the posts, but found nothing that would help us. My uncle said he's going to help me get in contact with his work, but I'm scared of John's reaction if I did that. As of current, my sister isn't totally settled on leaving John, so I've gone LC with her. She said her reasons for staying with John is because she just can't see John acting like this. Luckily, I have friends and family who are on my side. Sorry this update is kind of bleak. Story 2. Hairstylist has been keeping my hair? I'm weirded out. I'm also going to be vague because obvious reasons. I'm 30 ASF and my stylist is 40S. I got my haircut today at a stylist I've been using for about 9 months now. I think this is my 6th appointment with them. I usually do a trim or cut style. Today I went from long hair, high lower back, to an A-line bob. Again, since I started seeing this person, I usually get current style maintenance trim. This time was a dramatic length adjustment, so they took a picture of the cut length in the floor to add to their social media, then intending to add before, after hours too. That's all totally fine and normal. They go grab a broom, sweep up the hair, and place the dustpan on the counter for a bit. Again, normal. They grab the broom and pan and head to the back of the shop. They're gone a few minutes. No biggie dot. Then they go out to smoke. But here's where it gets weird. The bathroom is in the back of the shop too. I need to go and step into the back. I don't really notice anything on the way into the bathroom. I go and start to head back out. But I notice my name on a small clear tote on the table. It has no lid, and it has my hair in it. At first I didn't really think much of it, but I looked closer and see it's not just today's discarded hair, but looks like at least a few of my trim sessions. Mixed with, it looked like potpourri and a little sand or something, and printed pictures of the cut hair with dates. The printer is sitting right next to it, with today's discarded hair pick in the tray. There didn't seem to be any other containers like this when I looked around. It was fucking weird, so I took a pic on my phone. I honestly didn't know what to think or do and went back out into the salon. They came back in, and I mentioned that I went to the restroom, and they seemed to freak out a little, but didn't mention it. I didn't really know what to say, so I just let them finish styling my hair, paid, and left. As a socially anxious introvert, this was my nightmare. I got home, and the more I looked at this picture, the more ick I got. I ended up texting them an hour ago, sending the picture, and requesting they remove the weird box of me and asking for an explanation. I said, "Hey, so I saw this and didn't know what to make of it. Can you help me understand what this is and why you have it? I'm not comfortable with you having this and request you please discard the contents. Also, even though I loved my cut, I believe it's best if I find a different stylist." They haven't responded. LOL WTF? Update. December 1st, 2024. Long post. Admins, please allow this separate post update. It's been about a week, and with the holiday I've all over the place, but I ended up going to law enforcement to make a report last Monday. I'll likely end up going back if this person keeps contacting me like they have been. I'll give a little timeline. Last Saturday, haircut and discovered the weird tub full of my hair. Texted stylist about the weird tub and said I'd be finding a new stylist. Hairstylist didn't respond. This is where I left off in the last post. A lot has happened since then. Sunday I woke up to a bunch of texts from the stylist. It woke me up because even though I have DND on my phone, I have a setting that overrides that if there are repeated contact attempts over 3, in case of emergencies. Here's what I got, copied and pasted. 3:49 a.m. I recommend going to a different stylist BC of this. It's not a big deal, small towns, and people talk, and I may not find the one that will take you after this, so ID reconsider. I don't like threats. 3:51 a.m. So I have your biological material, and it's mine property now. I can do what I want with it. I kept it because I can, and it means a lot to me. 3:54 a.m. You send the pic? I know what it looks like, it's mine. 4 a.m. You need to respond to me, BC. I think it's a misunderstanding, ABT, what this is. It's NBD, and you saying you are switching stylists has me triggered. I do good work, you said so? 4:04 a.m. I also charge a $350 client separation fee. So yeah, you can just say you're switching stylists with more consequences, and I know you said you already tried a few PPL before me. They not many beauty PPL in the area. 4:11 a.m. Asking for an explanation for a stylist having hair in a salon is crazy. Where else would I find hair at? I didn't do nothing wrong. But I will get rid of it if you are going to cry about it, but only if you say you won't be switching to no one else for your hair care. You mean a lot as a client and always tip well and do good work, so it doesn't make sense, and you know that, so maybe don't threaten someone who does your hair or hurt there by making accusatory statements. I didn't respond to any of those that morning because it was so insane to me. I need to process things fully before I make a decision on how to deal with it, so I just didn't respond. Sunday afternoon, I start getting phone calls. This person called me 14 times that afternoon. About every other call, they left a voicemail. Most of the voicemails just said, "Call me back" or "Text me back," but 2 of them were unhinged. I'm going to paraphrase, but the gist of the first one was, sounds like they're crying, "Call me back, I'm getting scared you won't come back to me for your hair for real. I just like how your hair feels. That's why I kept it. Call me." The second unhinged message was left late Sunday night at 11:38 p.m., and it said, "I got rid of it except for one lock. I found out I like watching your hair burn more than I liked keeping it." I didn't respond to any of those messages, calls, or texts. The whole thing had me freaked out now. I decided by that time I was taking Monday off work to go to the police. Even if they couldn't do anything, I wanted a filed report of the weirdness. I woke up Monday to an email from the stylist with an invoice of $375 for client breach of contract fee as the chargeable line item. Again, copy and pasting here. The email body was just for being a bitch. It was sent from their business email, too, so they're really doing everything they can to ruin themselves. Even if I had a contract with this nutter, which I don't, the original amount was for $350. They can't even get their extortion fees right. I did email them back stating that we had no contract and to cease all further communication with me from this point forward. I got ready and started heading to the police station around 9:45 Monday morning. I live in a rural area, so there are portions of my drive to and from our main town that doesn't have cell reception. When I finally got to town, I had 4 voicemails. I knew immediately who they were from. I talked to one of the officers on staff. They took my statement, a copy of the email, asked me to forward all the texts and screenshots of the numbers of calls. They said, at the least, the calls and texts could be considered menacing and harassment. But the voicemail where they mentioned how they like burning my hair was potentially concerning. The officer advised I contact a legal representative in case this person tries to take the bogus invoice to a civil suit court. And they said I'm welcome to change my number, but having the piling evidence if they continue to contact me after I explicitly told them not to in the email would only help me. I reached out to a lawyer Tuesday and left a detailed message regarding the situation. They are apparently out of the office until next Wednesday for the holiday, so we'll see if they have any advice. I've since received many texts and calls from the stylist. They sent a Happy Thanksgiving text on Thursday morning as well. Regardless, they are giving me a lot of evidentiary material to work with, but I'm so unsettled. I can't wait to hear from the lawyer this week. Disclaimer: OOP has updated after the Baru was posted, so Peru's update is included. Mini update in comments. December 8th, 2024. Mini update. I woke up to new comments and requests for updates. Firstly, I am okay and safe for now. The person has continued to contact me on a regular basis via phone and email. I do have personal protection that I'm comfortable with and can wield with accuracy. But I'm nearly certain this person does not know where I live, so I don't anticipate any type of confrontation here. Our house and property has complete camera coverage as well. If anything shows up, we're well aware. I will be posting a more in-depth update with more texts and emails up to this point, and regarding a specific incident that happened on Friday, on Tuesday. I have an appointment to speak with another officer then to discuss the potential of criminal action and legal consequences for the stylist as a result. Thank you all for your concern and the validation that this is absolutely insane. I'll leave you with a text from this past week, one I think you'll all enjoy, question, use for a model of how not to make friends. Once again, copied, pasted. 5:12 a.m., April 24th, 12. Don't never say never. Never coming back, don't make me laugh. I don't want her ass back, he can beg me, though. Might help. Story 3. Ada for being disgusted and just saying okay when my fiancé broke up with me? So, I don't know, man. I, 28, had been with my fiancée, Alex, 34, since 2020. We met at a friend's party, hit it off, and had been together ever since. He finished his doctorate in economics just last year. Since then, he has been working at the uni. I have my master's in media sciences and decided to start working instead of going for a PhD. Okay, so the problem is that Alex broke up with me last Monday. It was literally so surreal and honestly, just weird. For the past few months, he'd been acting strange. He was making demands and then dropping them immediately. A few examples. He told me we were going to paint our walls back from dark green to white. When I asked why, he just said, "For fuck's sake, forget it," and never brought it up again, even when I asked. Another time, he came home and got mad because I was sitting on the couch with my head covered in a blanket. I had cramps. He was upset because I was just sitting there watching Netflix. Mind you, the house was spotless. When I tried to talk about it, he said, "Forget it, it's not a big deal." This kind of thing became common. Every time I tried to communicate, tried to figure out what was going on, whether it was something I did or maybe he was just stressed at work, he would just say everything was fine, but he was clearly seething with rage. I didn't even have to do anything. He would find something to complain about. The apartment, clothes, me, work, etc. So, I gave him space, which apparently was also wrong. I told him I was going to help my parents with repairs for a few days, and somehow that was also wrong because he wanted to renovate the apartment too. Then, on Monday, I got a text saying we needed to talk. I knew what was coming, and after the last few months, I had made peace with it. When I came home, he was sitting on the couch. He didn't even wait for me to take off my jacket before saying, "I want to break up." Then the verbal diarrhea started. He told me he resented me. First, because I didn't pursue my academic career further, even though I was capable, and he didn't want to upset me at the time. Then, when I started making more money, since he didn't make much as a PhD student, he felt like I should have the last word financially, and he hated it. Mind you, I never said anything like, "It's my money, so I have the final say." That's a rule he imposed on himself, and he hated it. He said he hated our paint scheme, the couch, and even our fucking crock pot. Then he told me he had rejected a better PhD program to stay here because I had already started my job by the time he got the acceptance letters. Only he never told me he had even applied overseas. He said a few months ago he checked in with a friend who's in that program, saw how they were thriving, and decided I ruined his life. He said I had too much control over his life and that he hated the idea that I could just decide not to pay for things and fuck him over. I honestly don't even know what that means. He also said he hated that all his friends loved me and didn't let him vent about me. Then he said again, "I'm done." I was floored. I had already made peace with the idea that we were ending, and it hurt, but after that rant, I was just disgusted. I looked at him, probably with a disgusted expression, and said, "Okay." He lost it. He said this is exactly what he meant, that it was horrible. We had been together for 4 years, and all I had to say was okay to our breakup? I just asked if he wanted to stay here while he figured out where to go. He said, "Typical. Of course you're holding the apartment over me," and started ranting again, so I just left. I told my parents, and they're also confused. My dad suggested I reach out to our landlord and explain the situation to see what options I have. I can keep paying the rent no problem myself. He covered the utilities and some subscriptions. Just to reiterate, I never had a problem with this. I saw that he was chasing his dream, and that was more important to me than a 50-50ths financial split. I make good money and am happy at my job. I never saw it as slaving away. I always had the mentality that my money was our money because we were building a life together. Of course, I had my own savings and fun money, but I honestly never cared. As long as I felt he was working towards something and wasn't taking advantage of me, I was fine with it. More than fine. Alex is still mad. He's going between texting me like a robot about the logistics of the split to being a seething asshole complaining about everything. I'm not even hurt anymore. I just feel nauseated by him at this point. I don't know, should I have reacted differently? Edit. Thank you for all your opinions. It was nice to get this off my chest, LOL. Just to clarify, though, I don't feel like a victim. I feel like something happened, and my relationship just turned bad. He behaved like an asshole, but that is the extent of it. Very clearly something is going on, but he doesn't want me to be part of whatever it is, and I have to respect that. Now I just have to detangle myself legally from him, and after that, I'll just be left alone with my ugly green wall color. I think I might also adopt a cat, as my ex was really allergic. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter, NTA. Dude basically said he hates you and everything about you. What are you supposed to do? Beg for his love when you can find someone who'll give it to you readily? Nah. Sorry this happened, and that you were blindsided, but this will be a good thing in the long run. On to the next. FWIWW, he sounds jealous, insecure, and emotionally stunted. If what you've written is how things played out, then you dodged a huge bullet. OP. He was basically doing his own renditions of 10 Things I Hate About You. IDK? I mean, he wants to break up with me. Why would I plead? It is done. To a deleted comment, I was really confused, trying to take everything in. He talked really fast and a lot. So I did not know what else to say. Also, because everything I do is wrong. I think he would have been even more annoyed if I started to cry or something. Ghost him now? I can't ghost him. We have to talk about the lease, about our wedding savings account, and a few other things. To another commenter, yes, that is easy said, but I have to wait to get response from the landlord. We have to inform the back, etc., etc. So until I don't have confirmation that I am in the clear, I am keeping him unblocked. I have him muted the way lol. Commenter, sounds like his ego couldn't handle you being the breadwinner. Not your problem. He could have communicated like an adult rather than seething in his own insecurities. He sounds emotionally weak. OOP, which is so dumb. He is a doctor in economy and past pursuing becoming a professor. Commenter, dude basically hates himself for decisions he took without ever consulting you. He chose his comforts, but now since others seem in a better position, he is venting on you and making you the culprit. NTA, but your man has a little brain and doesn't know what to do with it. OOP, I would have supported him if he wanted to move away. IDK if we would have stayed together because LDRs are hard, but I would have been 100% supportive. Maybe he resented you for being successful while he wasn't. But that is the thing. He was successful. He has even a few published papers in important magazines and is on the way to become a junior professor. He is objectively really successful. This is all just so weird. Commenter, girl, I've been with a man like that. They want drama. They want toxicity. They will fuck up your life out of pure insecurity and hate. You dodged a massive bullet. I'm sorry this happened. You deserve better. Wish you the best. OP. Then I hope he meets the telenovela star of his dreams. I prefer my boring, happy life. Commenter. What country are you in? Here in the U.S., the AVG person would have accumulated debt if they made it that far in their edu. OOP. Germany. Update post. November 25th, 2024. To start, Alex moved out pretty quickly after the breakup. He has been staying with a friend, and we sorted out everything like mail, subscriptions, and the lease. I'm also in the process of adopting a cat. Her name is Luna, but I have been thinking about changing it since my family already has 2 pets named Luna, Amun, and Kamar. She is still at her foster home for now, but I have visited her a few times, and I already adore her. She is a scrappy little tabby who follows her foster mom around like a shadow, and I can't wait for her to move in during the first week of December. I've already gotten her bowls, toys, and a bed by the window ready. Now on to what happened. Last week I was out showing someone around the city. He is the son of my parents' friends who recently moved here for work. My parents asked me to help him get familiar with the area, so I agreed. It was nothing special, just walking around, grabbing coffee, and pointing out useful spots in the city. Apparently, Alex saw us. I didn't even realize he was there. But later that night, I started getting texts from an unknown number. I guess he got a new number since I blocked his old one. The texts were just weird. He accused me of flaunting my new relationship in public, said I must have been seeing this guy before we broke up, and told me that everything he suspected about me was true. I didn't respond. I wasn't going to entertain his paranoia. The messages kept coming, though. They went from angry to desperate, with him saying things like, At least admit you were lying to me. And was anything about us even real? It was exhausting and honestly a little scary to see how quickly he spiraled. For the record, this guy isn't my boyfriend. He's not even someone I'm interested in. He's just the son of family friends who needed help settling into the city. The whole thing was completely innocent, but Alex has twisted it into some kind of betrayal in his head. What gets me is how little Alex seems to know me. I'm not the type of person to jump into a relationship so soon after everything that happened. Even if I were, it wouldn't be any of his business. We are done. I've made that clear. After I didn't respond to his texts, Alex started calling. I didn't pick up, but the voicemails were a mix of angry rants and desperate pleas. I ended up blocking his new number too. It feels ridiculous that I have to keep doing this, but I guess this is where we are now. Then this weekend I went out to a bar with my friends. A few hours in, guess who walked in? Alex. I don't know if it was a coincidence or if he followed me there, but as soon as he spotted me, he came straight over. He was clearly upset, asking to talk, and I told him no. My friend stepped in, and thankfully he left without causing a scene, but it ruined my night. It felt like I couldn't escape him, no matter where I went or what I did. When I got home later that night, I was completely drained. I had just started to relax when I heard a knock on my door. It was Alex, standing there in tears. He started crying, saying he missed me, that he didn't understand why I was doing this to him, and that he didn't know how to move on. It was like all the anger from earlier had been replaced with this desperate sadness. I didn't let him in. I told him he needed to leave, and if he didn't, I would call someone to make him leave. He begged me to listen, but I just closed the door. I spent the rest of the night feeling shaken and honestly a little scared. I don't know what he's going through. I wrote his best friend about the situation, but the plea of talking to him. He said he would. I'm seriously considering getting a new phone number and possibly even talking to someone about how to handle this legally if it keeps happening. It feels unfair that I have to go to these lengths just to have some peace, but I don't see another option. Update Post 2, November 28, 2024. Thanks for the concern and support I've received. I'm fine. Really. A lot of people suggested things like getting a restraining order, but I just want to clarify that it's not as simple as walking into an office and asking for one. The process involves proving there's an immediate danger to your safety, providing evidence like texts, calls, or witnesses, and then attending court to get approval. It's not something you can do lightly or without solid proof. And no, I'm obviously not getting a gun. I've also seen people diagnosing Alex with various mental health issues, and I want to ask everyone to stop. Yes, something is clearly wrong, but I'm not a doctor, and neither are most of you. It's not fair or helpful to label him with something like bipolar disorder or anything else without real expertise. For what it's worth, I don't actually feel like I'm in danger. In the past month, these were the only 3 incidents that happened. I don't think he's actively stalking me so much as he just knew my patterns. The bar we were at is my favorite spot, and it was a party of one of my closest friends, so it makes sense that he might have guessed I'd be there. When he showed up at my apartment, he knows what time I usually get home. The city tour is the only thing that might have been more intentional, but it could also have been a coincidence that triggered everything. Anyway, this is the end of it. Yesterday, Alex came over with his mom and one of his friends. At first, I didn't want to let him in, but he promised me that this would be the last time I ever saw him. I agreed, mostly because his mom and friend were there, and I figured it would be more awkward to argue on my doorstep. When we sat down, Alex admitted that he was going through a crisis. He told me he was mad at me, but he didn't know why. He said he doesn't like me, that I annoy him, but that he weirdly still loves me, which is why he went crazy when he saw me with someone else. He assured me there wasn't anyone else on his end either. He said he felt like he was going insane. He talked about how he feels judged for being older and not being able to give me the life he thinks I deserve. He said he hates his colleagues, hates his job, hates everything right now, and that everyone and everything annoys him. He told me he feels old and like he should want kids at this point in his life, but he doesn't, and that thought terrifies him. He said he just wants to be alone and not talk to anyone for a while. I didn't say much. I mostly just nodded because I didn't know what to say. After he was done, he told me he was leaving. He's on some kind of mental health leave from work, and he said he's leaving the country on Sunday. He's going to South America to spend time in nature and find himself. He thanked me for everything and said he was sorry for how he acted. Then he just got up, grabbed the few things he had left at my place, and walked out. His mom was inconsolable. She kept apologizing to me over and over, saying how embarrassed she was by his behavior. I told her it was okay and that she didn't need to apologize for him. She cried a lot, and his friend ended up driving her home after Alex left. I don't really know how I feel about all of this. Part of me is relieved that it's over. Part of me feels sad for him because he clearly doesn't know how to deal with everything he's feeling. Mostly, though, I just feel tired. I'm glad he's taking steps to figure himself out, but it's not my responsibility anymore. Some of OOP's comments. On not getting a gun, editor's note, it was more than likely a downvoted troll who asked, but I liked OOP's response. You can't buy guns at an Aldi. It's more dangerous to own a gun when you have no training with it than not owning one. Commenter. He's a little young for a midlife crisis, but certainly the man is having issues with his life choices and it's tearing him apart. Your empathy is warranted, but in the end those troubles are his, not yours. Hopefully, this is the last you'll hear of him. Good luck to you. OOP, it's just a life crisis then, I guess? Who knows? Update, same post, December 3rd, 2024. Edit 03.12, he is definitely gone. My friend sent me some of his Insta stories of him at the airport, and then about a day later in Bogota, so, yep, he is gone. I am safe, and on Friday I get to pick up Helios Maximus I, LOL. Heli for short. Story 4. Ada for telling my 19F daughter she will have to move out of my house if I get divorced because of her lies after her stepdad saw her naked. Throwaway account due to the situation, but I need to know because I'm getting calls and text from family calling me an asshole for not being on my daughter's side. My husband and I have been married for a little over 5 years now. I will say my daughter 19F, and he has an okay relationship, not exactly father and daughter, but almost advice asked and given relationship basically. I have never picked up on anything weird from my husband towards my daughter, and my daughter has never said or insinuated anything at all as well. On Thursday, me and my husband was watching a movie in the living room. We paused the movie as he got up to use the bathroom. I heard him knocking on the door twice. Literally 3 knocks each time on the door a couple of seconds apart. It was loud enough for me to hear him knocking from the living room. The next moment I heard screaming. I rushed to the bathroom and saw my daughter completely naked, covering herself and yelling at my husband that to get out. I didn't see everything that happened, but what I saw after I heard yelling was my husband literally fell over his own feet and struggling to get the bathroom door closed. I asked my husband what happened, and he said he knocked, nobody answered, so he went in and my daughter was naked in front of the mirror, and he tried to get out. After my daughter calmed down, I asked her side of what happened, and she said she was changing, and all of a sudden my husband walked into the bathroom. I asked her why she didn't answer him when he knocked. She said he didn't. I told her I heard him knock, so I am sure that he did. She said she didn't hear it because she had her ear pods and listening to music. We got the situation sorted, and my husband did apologize to her and explained he thought the bathroom was empty and walked in. She even gave him a hug and apologized for yelling at him. The problem now is, my daughter got family members involved, and they are now calling my husband a creep. Got a call from my sister berating me for still having my husband in the house. I asked what she meant, and I came out that my daughter spun a whole other story and left out the fact that she was listening to music with her ear pods and is telling everyone that she answered him and he still walked into the bathroom to look at her. We have cameras in our hallway and it proves that my husband did knock as you can see it on the video, but the cameras has no audio. I sat my daughter down and asked her, and she denied saying anything like that or that she told anyone anything. I got mad and asked then how does your aunt know what happened, and she went silent. She said she talked to her niece about it and she must have told her mother. I asked her why did she lie about what happened and made my husband look bad when he did nothing wrong. She again denied lying about anything, and I told her what my sister told me. She just started to cry and say sorry. She was just talking and making up scenarios with her niece. The whole day yesterday I got calls and text from my family members as the story spread. The wrong story is spreading and my husband is looking like a creep to everyone. I sat my daughter down again and had her read some of the things being said about my husband and told her she has to fix this because her lying is what caused this. She refused, saying she didn't spread this and she only told her niece and doesn't want to say anything to anyone because they will think bad about her. She said, "They know my husband, and this will just blow over." Everything did blow up when my husband walked into the living room with his bags packed and said he is going to stay with his parents for a while because he doesn't want to be in this situation anymore where he is made out to be this kind of person. My daughter broke down and apologized repeatedly and said she will fix it by my husband still left. I told her if I get divorced because of her lies, she will be moving out of my house. I told her she better fix what she did and tell everyone what really happened, because I will not be loosing a man that loves and actually cares for me like my husband does over lies. She asked me to help her, and I told her no, she isn't a child anymore, and her lies for attention did this. This is on her. I already tried, and I'm now also being accused of taking my husband's side and not providing a safe space for my daughter. I don't know what to do. My husband asked for space, and my daughter is inconsolable at the moment. I am not in the best state myself. Sorry if my post is all over the place. I don't even know if my title is correct on this post. I have reread AMD reread and it still doesn't make sneeze to me. ATA has no consensus bot. OOP received mixed reactions. Relevant comment. Commenter 1. This looks like a setup because the daughter knows that she does not live alone, and yet she did not close the door to the bathroom while listening to music on her headphones. What's more, you have camera footage of her knocking and waiting. If you truly love your husband, continue to be by his side. OP. I am on his side completely and fully. I don't want to lose him. My family is just making it difficult because we are very close, and every time I tried to explain what really happened, I am just called an asshole and making excuses. Where is OOP's ex-husband, the daughter's father? OP. Excuse me. This is my first marriage. My daughter's father ran the day he found out I was pregnant, and I raised my daughter alone with help from my family until my husband came into my life. OOP responds on why and how she has cameras inside the house and their setups. OOP. Camera is in my hallway, and you can see all the doors to every room from the camera. It's pointed down the hall, not at any door specifically. You don't, isn't that normal? We have cameras around the house and inside, pointing at the two entrances, and then one pointing down the hallway that shows every door. My husband sometimes works away from home, and if I get woken up throughout the night, I check the cameras if I heard anything. I'm not just going to run out of my room to check the house. I check the cameras first to see if someone is in my house. Who just goes out into possible danger without knowing what is there? I feel like this is normal, because my husband works away sometimes, so we have 3 cameras inside the house, one each watching the front and back door, and one pointing down the hallway. You can see each door on the camera in the hallway. If I hear something at night, especially if my husband isn't home, I have a look at the cameras outside ones and inside ones. I don't know if someone is in the house already, and I'm not just going to run outside to check the house. Commenter 2. You could very easily lose your husband, and I wouldn't blame him. Does he do things for your daughter, such as errands, favors, financial support? If so, that's a heck of a way for him to be treated. OOP. All of if my husband is the one that gave the majority of the money for her car, and he is also covering her college tuition. Unfortunately, my work doesn't pay that much. He makes the majority of the income of the household. OP is accused of picking her husband over her daughter. OP. So I should choose my daughter who lied for attention, or some reason don't really know why she lied, especially over something like this, over a man that has done nothing but love me and cared for us both without asking anything in return. I will sound selfish now, I know that, but I don't care. My husband comes first now. My marriage comes first. Trying to fix what she broke comes first, not her, especially since she refuses to help fix what she broke. Actions have consequences, and again I will be called a bad mother, but she is going to learn this lesson the hard way. Update. December 2nd, 2024. Sorry for only updating now, but I'm not in the best of places at the moment, and it has taken me a couple of days to get my thoughts together. I don't know what to do anymore. My husband has asked for a divorce. First, let me answer a couple of questions I saw coming up repeatedly. We have locks on every door in the house. I don't know why my daughter didn't use the lock on the door. The cameras inside the house isn't pointed at any door, except for the ones pointed at the front door and back door. The other camera is at the end of the hall, and you can see every door in the hallway from that camera. We have a bathroom in our room, but we can't use it at the moment. The water is completely shut off due to renovation of the bathroom. My husband has asked for a divorce. On Friday he came back home and asked to talk. During our talk, he showed me his phone, and some of the things my family members were saying about him was just outright horrible. Calling him a pedo, asking him how many times he has taken a peek before. I don't recognize any of my family anymore. I understand if he actually did something, but he hasn't. And the hatred they are showing over a stupid mistake tell me they refuse to listen, or they have hated him from the start, and is now using this to try and get rid of him. He said he can't ever come back, and this has now started to affect his work life as well. He was called into HR to explain because some of my family members have called his office. Luckily, they haven't done anything and refused to do anything until a case is brought against him. They know my husband very well, and I think they believe him as well because he is still working. During our talk, he explained that he does love me and still does, and he is happy I stood up for him. But my daughter's actions have caused too many problems, accusations, and made him scared. He explained he sat at the office and at his parents' home every day just waiting for the police to show up and arrest him. He said her lies broke him and he can't see a way to come back from it. I asked him to reconsider and that maybe we can go for counseling, but he also refused, saying everything is too broken to fix. I told him that I will kick out my daughter and told him about everything I did and told my daughter to do, but he said I'm missing the point. His life could have been completely ruined because of a lie. My family will never trust him again and will always harbor hatred or suspicions about him, especially now that my daughter want to clear things so long afterwards they will think we forced her to do it, and that will just make things worse. He said he will always remain the creep in their eyes. I asked him what if I cut off my family and we moved away because I was already working on that. I showed him my phone and the message I have sent every single person so far that refused to listen and that I blocked them. He asked what about my daughter. I told him again. I will be kicking her out and she will be staying with my parents from now on. He asked, what if we moved away? Will I abandon my daughter then because he doesn't want to be near her or be alone with her at all? I didn't know what to say about that. Before I could answer, he said again it's better for us to get divorced. He said, I will never ask you to abandon your daughter. I will never expect you to do something like that, but I don't want her anywhere near me. If you abandon your daughter, I don't know if I could ever look at you the same afterwards, even if it was for my sake. The only solution here is for us to get divorced. My daughter came running down the hallway into the living room, crying. I think she was listening to our conversation, before she could get a word out. My husband jumped up from the couch and put his hands out and asked her not to get near him. He said, before you say anything, I will start to record the conversation now, and took out his phone. I think I saw something break in my daughter's eyes at that moment at the realization of everything hit her all at once. She asked my husband to forgive her, and she never meant for things to get so out of hand. She was just making up scenarios with her cousin, and her cousin was the one that ran with it. My husband asked her why didn't she clear it up immediately then. She said she did think it will go this far and thought it will just blow over because everyone knows him. He showed her his phone and asked her to read some of the messages, and my daughter went completely silent. We talked for a boy 4 hours. At the end, my husband said he will give us 3 months to move out of the house because it is his house. My daughter can keep the car because it was a gift, and that he will finish paying this year's tuition, but will not pay anything going forward. He said he hasn't gotten a lawyer yet, but told me to get one. He will like to do this without lawyer, but if I want to, I can get one. He said he will be fair in their divorce and doesn't harbor anything against me, but he can't stay in the relationship. My daughter was just sitting on the floor looking like a ghost, and I couldn't just say anything, listen to him talk about divorce and what will be split and what not like it was nothing. He was talking like the last 5 years was nothing and it was just easy to move on. The best way to describe it was like he was returning something to a store. He left the house and I just sat on the couch. I don't know if I was crying, talking, or what. I can't remember much as everything was muffled around me until my daughter started to full-on crying, saying sorry, sorry, sorry over and over again, laying on the floor. I don't know how long I sat on the couch, but when I got up I saw my husband's car still in the driveway. I looked out of the window and I could see him full-on crying in the car. Seeing that completely broke me. My daughter and I haven't talked since my husband was here Friday. Not a word to each other. My family members have showed up to the house to apologize because apparently my daughter has all of a sudden now cleared everything up, and she herself shared the video from the camera with the family members. Every time they show up, I just close the door in their faces. I have gotten Facebook, Instagram, calls, and text from them, and when I block them, they keep making new account of use different numbers. I don't want to lose my husband. I really don't. This is the first man who I've ever met that has actually treated me with kindness, respect, and love, and now it's all over. I have tried to talk to him and tried to convince him to go to counseling with me, but every time I have tried, he sends back, I can't take the risk. I have tried to meet him in person, but he just says it won't be a good idea. I have gone over to his parents' house, but they refuse to let me see him. I have gone to his work to talk to him, but I was told he was sent home by his boss. I truly don't know how to fix this. Having my daughter move out now won't work because I need to be out of the house as well. I don't want anything from my husband, I just want him. I haven't talked to a lawyer yet, but I don't think I can keep the house. He owned it before we moved into the house. I really want to fix this. I still want to kick my daughter out of the house, but will he still give me a chance to fix it even after what my husband said about me abandoning my daughter and not seeing me the same afterwards? I don't know anyone. Am I really going to lose a wonderful man? Edit. I forgot how Reddit fixates on one thing. The comment about the house I made. I have not intentions of trying to take his house or anything like that. It's not my house. I had questions in my previous post about the house, and I think I just answered it. I'm not going to try and take his house. He owns it and has owned it before we got together. I have no right to the house and will not try to take the house. I hope this clears it up. Relevant. Comment? OP clarifies up on who her daughter talked to regarding the scenarios. OP. My daughter talked to her cousin, my sister daughter. Sorry for the mistake or confusion, not in the right headspace the last week. Editor's note, OOP mentioned daughter's niece in the original post. Why didn't OOP's husband get out from the bathroom right away? OOP. When I got up after my daughter started screaming, it took me 2 steps, then I could see into the hallway. What I saw was him backing up and fumbling and grabbing at the door to close it. Commenter 1. I want to know the reaction of the cousin and aunt who ran with it. OOP. They are completely silent and refuses to answer calls, text, or even open the door when I went to their house. Commenter 2. It's over. Your daughter and your family almost destroyed his life. From his perspective, he's probably feeling somewhat grateful that she only destroyed his marriage. Listen, they phoned his work and leveled accusations. He got pulled into HR. He was sitting at his parents' house waiting to be arrested. That is hugely traumatizing. And now you phone him, show up at his parents' house, show up at his work? Sis, stop! It's over. Commenter 3. Quite simply, you can't fix this. What your daughter did is absolutely horrendous. She has very much ruined your soon-to-be ex-husband's reputation and your relationship with one lie. Stop visiting him at work. Stop trying to contact him. Just stop. As hard as this is for you, it's harder for him. The more you reach out violating his boundaries, the more likely he will build resentment. If you are unable to respect his wishes over contacting him, it's no wonder why your daughter has boundary issues. Focus on rebuilding yours and your daughter's lives fresh, without him. Get therapy for your daughter so she learns to be better. Right now, she's a dumpster fire. It sounds like he is going to be very kind to you in the divorce. Commenter 4. Give him all he asked for. He's being gracious enough to not press charges against your stupid daughter, so let him have his life back. Commenter 5. Your daughter needs to take responsibility for the entire thing. She is 19, therefore an adult. Falsely accusing a man in this day and age of sexual assault or pedo or whatever is a life ender. Your family helped see to that as well, meaning that whether it was the cousin or your daughter, they decided to put it on blast. That is on you all to get your daughter and cousin to admit it to the family. It is safest for him to leave you guys. Story 5. Ita for ignoring the groomsman. This happened at a wedding I was a bridesmaid at a few weeks ago. I, 35F, have never been married, no kids, and more than likely will be the last of my friend group to get married. I've been a bridesmaid too many times to count. Almost always I get paired off with another single guy. My family and friends treat this as an attempt to hook me up with other single guy. They think it will be so romantic if we tell our grandkids who we met at a wedding. I've never been interested in these guys. At the last wedding I was at, I was paired off with the groom's 42-year-old stepbrother. Off the bat, I wasn't interested in Dave. If I were to see his profile on a dating app, I would immediately swipe left. Back to this wedding. I get through the ceremony and am now at the reception. I run into some old friends haven't seen in a long time and didn't know they would be in town. So we spent the night together, catching up and covertly watching a VGK game someone was streaming on their phone. Editor's note, VGK is short for the Vegas Golden Knights, a U.S. National Hockey League team. The bride came up to me and asked if I wanted to sit with Dave. He was alone at a table and wanted to get to know me better. I told her, sorry, I wasn't interested, and went back to talking with my friends. If Dave wanted to talk to me, well, he's a grown man and can do it himself. I spend the night hanging out with my friends, having a great time, and didn't think much of it until a few weeks later. I see the bride at a party and she doesn't even greet me. She just tells me that I was a B for ignoring Dave. Apparently he thought I was cute and wanted to get to know me better. He just couldn't because he struggles with social cues. At least I could have just saw with him for a few minutes and be nice to him. First off, I am sick of being nice just to make a man happy. I told her that I was just there to be a bridesmaid, not to be a minder for a middle-aged man. She still called me out for being a rude, stuck-up B. Was I the asshole, or was the bride being out of line? One more thing. A few months before the wedding, I started to see a guy I met at a conference. I never told anyone because I wasn't sure if the relationship would last at the time. I don't plan on telling anyone until we hit a milestone because there would be some pushback. It's an international LDR. Even if I was single, I'm still not interested in Dave. Relevant comment. Indeed, you were not, nor should have been, a minder for a middle-aged man. If Dave thought you were cute and wanted to spend time with you, he could have opened his mouth and said so. Imagine if you ended up dating or marrying Dave. Then you could be his social coordinator and handholder, possibly for the rest of your life. Doesn't that sound like a plan? Purris. If you had been told being a date with Dave was the bride's expectation of you as a member of the bridal party, you could have saved yourself some money and time and excused yourself from the whole event. NTA. OP. If I had known I would have to babysit an underemployed 42-year-old man who is twice my size, I would have dropped out of bridesmaid detail and then retire from the position. Update Tuesday, December 3rd, 2024. Hello. I made a post about a year ago about a wedding I was at where I ignored the groomsman who wanted to hook up with me. It didn't get much attention, but the comments were pretty life-affirming. I've been going through a pretty hard time for a few years now. It's frustrating to see your friends find that one and settle down while you're struggling to navigate your 30s alone. Especially when you're from a family and a part of the country where if a woman isn't married with kids by a certain age, something must be wrong with her. My family and friends mean well, but they don't always see how their actions hurt me. Dave did try to reach out to me after the wedding, but I just blocked him. I haven't seen him since, nor do I care to know what he's up to. I stopped talking to the bride. I really didn't appreciate the name-calling or being expected to babysit a middle-aged man. Anyway, I wanted to update on this story so I can close out that part of my life. After the wedding, I just made it clear to everyone. I'm done being a bridesmaid. I am officially retired. If you're getting married, good for you. I'm not going to be a bridesmaid. Not even for an all-expenses-paid bachelorette trip to Cancun. I think the fact that I was getting drunk and watching a hockey game with friends at the reception said it all. I'm just burned out from going to too many weddings. That retirement becomes official over the summer. I had mentioned that I was in a LDR. It didn't work out, but it did introduce me to a pretty big career opportunity. I spent a pretty big chunk of 2024 applying for this gig, waiting to see if I got hired, and when I did, close out my life in America. I'm now living in Australia at a job I love and being able to be my own person. I cut my hair, I got some tattoos. I found a hobby I love. I have new friends who run on the same vibe. I don't think I'm going to get married. If I do, that's great. But at my age, I don't think kids are in my future anymore. And you know what? I'm starting to accept it. My family doesn't, but I have siblings with kids so my parents can spoil them. I think I just needed to get away from a really restrictive place in order to find my own happiness. Thanks, guys. I really needed this advice in my life. Still love the VGK, and now I can rep for them from down under. Story 6. My best friend is dating my abuser and wants me to reconcile with him, so I kicked her out of my home. I've tried to write this out for days now, but I keep getting too upset to concentrate, so this might be a bit jumpy. I don't have family in the sense many understand family to be. So I've been pretty much a loner with one exception, my best friend Tammy. We met in middle school and just became joined at the hip. Things changed a bit in college. My parents forced me into a Christian out-of-state college. Tammy applied and got accepted to the other college in the town. So we both went out there and were roommates for 2 of the years before I met my first ever boyfriend. I will call him Trent. I moved in with him the end of junior year, and I don't know when it started happening, but he went from charming and affectionate to controlling. I don't wish to upset anyone, so I will hit the pause button and warn you that below is some of the things he did for me to label him abusive. He would put me down and hint he could find someone better, or that if he cheats, it will be my fault since I wasn't this or that enough. It started to get physical senior year. At first it was him pushing me out of the way if he was walking by and I was in the path for whatever reason. Then he would slap me in arguments calling me worthless, a waste of his time and young years, a broken toy no one will love. I didn't have any real self-esteem, so I stayed, thinking I was the problem, and when I called home about it, I was told that the problem was me. I started to make my exit plan the day after I graduated. He had proposed, and I hesitated, and he screamed at me to ask why, then her swung and punched the wall right next to my head. I fell to the floor in fear, and he tried to comfort me and basically forced me into sex. When I woke up the next morning, the ring was on my finger, and he forced me again and later called it make-up sex, saying he forgave me for the way I treated him. That is the extremely short explanation, but there are so many stories of him forcing me into bed, hitting me or threatening to kill me, and more. So I started to make a plan. I found a shelter in the city nearby. I started hiding things in the trunk of my car. I was in the service industry then, and so I would take more shifts whenever I could and hide my cash tips in a box of tampons in my purse. And I finally was ready and left him. Left my phone, I had a new cheap one, and never went back. Tammy knew him and lived near us, but she didn't know about my plan. She messaged me on social media and I told her what happened. All of what happened. So she played dumb when he came around asking where I was, spinning the story that I was suicidal and he is calling the police to find me. He never found me. That was years ago. I am now 36 and Tammy is too. Trent is 38. Tammy became a bit religious, but I told her as long as she is happy and safe, I don't care what she leans on in faith. She started to invite me out to her church 4 years ago, and I kept saying no until I very firmly said if she brought it up again, I would just walk out or hang up. I'm not against anyone believing what they want. I just don't want or need to be sucked into it. I honestly do not mean any offense to anyone of any faith. I myself am just agnostic, and if that ever will change, I will decide on my own, but I doubt it will. She got a job 2 years ago overseas. I acted excited for her, and I was, but I was also deeply devastated. Without her, I had no one else. By this time, I wasn't in contact much with family, and I do have surface-level friends, but no one that's known me in the real sense. I worked it out with my counselor and just carried on. We stayed in touch online and video chatted a lot. She would show me London, and I would show her my transition to moving to Texas. We would chronicle our explorations of our new cities, and then one day it started to slow down on her end, right around the time she went to visit a friend in our old college town. She then asked if she flew to Texas sometime this summer. Could she stay with me a few days, and I excitedly agreed. So early this month, just a few weeks ago, she came here. She was off the whole first day, but I figured she was tired. Then the next day we went out and got drunk. She started to cry, and I got us an Uber back to my place and asked her what was wrong. That's when she asked me not to hate her and told me everything. She's with Trent. She's been with him almost a year. I was too stunned to even say anything, and she went on and on about how it's not what I think and he has changed. She told me he found Jesus and turned his life around and deeply regrets the way he treated me. The more she talked, the more I just shut off. I didn't even have it in me to feel anger. I just stared at her frozen as she talked until she said, "Please just say something." So I did. I told her to get the fuck out. She started to explain it all again. She hated him forever, but they kept running into each other. He goes to church and showed he has changed, blah-de-blah-de-blah. I didn't interrupt her, but when she stopped talking again, I just repeated myself. She argued more, and I would just listen and repeat until she grabbed her stuff and left. It was silent between us for a week until my dad texted me that Tammy called my parents crying and told me to get over myself. After all, it's not like I wanted to get back with him, right? And that's what I get for living with a man I wasn't married to. Then she texted the next week, rehashing her argument, and pretty much demanding I video chat with him to see for myself that he's changed and forgive him. She then blamed me that they can't take the next steps in their relationship because I don't have a forgiving heart and that I was malicious when I kicked her out. I've spent all of this week trying to figure out if I am insane to think this is a huge betrayal, a deal breaker. I mean, who even dates their friend's ex for one? But this? I blocked her after she hinted that my version of things was exaggerated and malicious, but I don't have other friends to turn to about this. I don't think I am, but and her family thinks I am TH at least for kicking her out in a strange city alone when she was just being honest with me. Am I? Ada has no consensus bot. OOP was NTA. Relevant. Comment? Commenter 1. She'll know she effed up when he starts hitting her too. Abusers don't change. NTAOP, and you're better off without either of them in your life. OOP. The thought of him ever lifting a hand to her throws me into a fit. I did warn her that he's sweet for a while until we were settled into living with one another. She said I was holding on to the past, and I don't know this new him. He's converted to Christianity and is now 5 years sober, so he would never. But I still don't like it. When I was with him, it was literal Jekyll and Hyde. Once a minute, he's rubbing my feet and showering me with gifts and affection. The next, he's putting me down in the most personal senses and hurting me. Commenter 2. One day, when she finally realizes that you were right in the first place, she'll need someone to help put the pieces back with her. Be that person, but don't be the sucker she wants you to be. OOP. I plan to leave the door open in case she needs help getting away. She still has me on social media. Leaving him was so hard to pull off without anyone knowing other than the people at the shelter and my boss at the restaurant. I know how hard and overwhelming it is. I could never leave her to do it on her own. Commenter 3. Basically, she knows he's a rapist, and she expects you to forgive him? If he's not prepared to turn himself into the police and admit I raped my ex at least twice, I used to hit her and threaten to kill her. He isn't remorseful. He doesn't want to take accountability. Cut off Tammy. I'm going to sound like a heartless bitch, but she knows he's abusive. She knows he's a rapist. She knows what kind of man he is. Unfortunately, she will likely find out she was wrong and he hasn't changed, because he will start abusing her. OP. Sorry. I flinched at the R word, and it took me a sec to reply. Tammy said even then, it wasn't rape because we were a couple. She said that I might have colored my opinion of what happened based on his misbehavior at the time and labeled it a dangerous term. It took me over 7 years before I could call it that. Shout out to my new no-nonsense psychiatrist. It still makes me uncomfortable, but I was able to say it 3 times in that session. Never put loud again, but I was able to say it. Commenter 4. Wow. Okay, I don't see how you're the AH in this situation. First, there are clearly established rules about dating friends' exes. It is not done without the friend's permission. This is true regardless of how the relationship went or ended. And here, an ex is someone you dated for a long time. So throwing her ass for violating this prohibition would be acceptable. Extreme, but acceptable. But not only is this guy your ex, but he was your abuser. And she knew he was your abuser? Oh, and it just so happens that she kept running into him all over the place? And now she thinks you should try reconciling with him? I have to wonder if that was her idea or his. Yeah, there's no fucking way. Best case scenario, OP. Tammy broke one of the cardinal rules of friendship. Worst case scenario, she's setting you up to be killed at Trent's request. No fucking way. One last point. You know how Trent is, and how he will be later on in his relationship with Tammy. You can absolutely refuse to be near her, and refuse to see her. But you may want to keep the line of communication open with her for when things go bad and she needs help. You can and should be explicit about that to Tammy BTW. OOP. I reiterated what I told her before when I got away from him. She basically dismissed me as stuck on the past, and unforgiving until she stayed on. I was weaponizing exaggerations. It's hard to reconcile that she's the same person I called after he forced me to bed the first time. Update, Undit, December 3rd, 2024. This is an update to my last post here. Sorry to everyone who reached out and I haven't responded. I honestly haven't been using the app as I had to change phones swiftly at one point and forgot the password when trying to log on my new device. It took Trent 2 weeks. I had a full-time job but also a part-time service industry job as a bartender. He showed up at the bar. It's a small bar and one of the regulars, Daisy F30S, is one of the folk I did confide in about Trent and Tammy. When Trent walked in, I happened to be chatting with Daisy and she saw my reaction. She asked what was wrong and then I told her that it was Trent. She wasted no time and went to get my manager. Trent sat at the end of the bar, and I took my time checking in on my other bar guests until my manager Heather F50S came out with the other 2 bartenders, both M30S. Trent had already begun knocking on the bar asking for service loudly, and I had been ignoring him. He got kicked out quickly and told that we can and do refuse service to him. I got texts from a new number saying it was Tammy and begging for me to answer. She called 4 times and I didn't answer. She left voicemails with Trent and one without all telling me that I was concerning them with my hatefulness. How I am alone in the world and that's not safe. Who would I turn to if someone broke into my home at night? Things of that nature and religious crap sprinkled in. I was still on the clock and Daisy suggested I stay at her parents'. I know her mom, who sometimes comes with her to the bar. At that point, I was shaken enough to take them up on it. Daisy's mom, Rose F60S, has been sweet enough to let me stay rent-free for as long as I needed, but I eventually moved in with one of the servers at the bar. She helped me look for legal representation, and I filed for a restraining order using screenshots I had emailed myself prior, old voicemails. And though we could not prove harassment on Tammy's end, Trent had said enough in the voicemails and messages he had sent that it qualified for a temporary restraining order. I am safe for now, and the hearing is in January. No one knows where I live currently, and I've shut down all social media. I've been NC with my family as they've been pushing me to give my address so they can send Christmas gifts. But when I gave them a P.O. box Daisy is allowing me to use, they got angry it wasn't an address, and that was suspicious enough for me not to trust them. It's strange, but I am slowly making friendships. And seeing a counselor helps with the stress. Trent is pretty much blacklisted from the square of bars where my bar is. Word gets around. I've not walked alone a single shift since. And that's my update. Not perfect, but I remembered my password when I was checking my email for any additional stuff to send to my lawyer and wanted to let every person concerned about me that I am okay. When this is resolved, I will try to update with more detail. Top comments. Commenter 1. Who would I turn to if someone broke into my home at night? What? Did she want you to turn to her so she could start dating the intruder? Commenter 2. Interesting how Tammy tried to isolate you by claiming you have no one to help you. And then it turns out you have Daisy and Rose and your boss and co-workers and the people who run the surrounding bars. Classic abuser tactics. Sadly, she must be learning from Trent. Stay strong, you've got this! Commenter 3. I am so sorry, Op, that you have to go through this. Daisy seems like an amazing person, and her kindness really sticks out to me in your 2 posts. You handled everything so well, you are incredibly strong. I'm glad you are seeing a counselor. Also, great idea with the P.O. box. If you are based in the USA, please request a takedown of your information from white pages, so no one can find your information further. Story 7. I, 32F, just found out my boyfriend, 36M, has been gambling behind my back and lost over $21,000. I don't really know where to go from here and could use some advice. We've been together over 3 years, and we've lived together for 2. It wasn't my money, thank God, and we don't share any bank accounts, but over 18 months that's what he's blown in crypto casinos. I only found out because I wanted to make a budget for us and asked if I could get his bank login to see his monthly statement, and after some hesitation he said, "If I give you that, you're just going to leave me," and came clean. He said he has been gambling for months and spent thousands. I don't think he even knew the extent of what he spent, but he gave me his login and I did all the math. Over $21K over 18 months, and that's only as far back as the bank would let me see. It could be even more than that. Some days he spent hundreds. One day he spent almost $3,000. I'm stunned. I caught him once before in February and he had spent $700. I told him if I found out he gambled again, it would be a deal breaker. And he swore he wouldn't do it again. Well, not only had he already been doing it for months, he continued to gamble the very next day. That could have also been his chance to come clean and tell me about his problem, but he was too afraid of the consequences. In the meantime, he always complains about being broke and we never do anything, no dates, no trips, and I don't need lavish gifts, but surprises now and again would be nice, and he would always say that he would spoil me if he could, but he just doesn't have the money. We also adopted a puppy in July, and although he paid for half of her cost, I've paid for everything ever since. All her vet bills, food treats, training classes, crate, etc. He owes me about $600, and he could have paid me back or pitched in this whole time, but sat back and said nothing as I paid. The same goes for our apartment. Nearly everything in it I have paid for, and the excuse was always, I don't have the money for it. I just always took him at his word, even though he makes twice as much as me. He always paid bills on time and his share of the rent, but still had no problem with the above. He says he is going to go to counseling, has an appointment booked, and is going to a GA meeting on Monday. I told him I was going to my parents for a few days to get some space, and he begged me to stay, promising that things will be different and that he will change. I feel I do love him, but I feel so betrayed, and I don't know how I can ever trust him again. We could have done so much with that money. He could have done so much with that money just for itself. It's so disappointing. If I move out, I can't afford to live on my own and will have to move back in with my parents. If I stay, I'm scared what the future will look like. Any advice would be greatly appreciated, especially from anyone who has experiences this or something similar. TLDR boyfriend gambled away $21K of his money behind my back and lied about it. Notable comments? Implant explant. So I'm not a gambling addict, but I've gotten sober from substances. I was rarely ever able to get sober without actual consequences. I had to lose the job, lose the relationship, lose the friendship, etc. before I took action. One of my jobs gave me a lot of chances, and I didn't commit to sobriety until I finally lost it. That doesn't mean you can't have a relationship with him in the future. But I think you're doing the right thing by moving out for the moment. It sounds like he's doing GA, etc. to keep the relationship, and that will only work for so long. He has to want this for himself, for it to stick. OOP response. Thank you for your feedback. I really appreciate it. You're right, he has to want this for himself, and I can't trust anything that comes out of his mouth right now. I hope he's serious about changing, if not for me, then for himself. Maybe me leaving is the consequence. He needs to realize he needs help, and he needs to stop. Mother of doggos. You told him gambling again would be a deal breaker. He gambled again. The same damn day. There is no saving the relationship. The relationship is over. You can leave him and eventually be happy, or stay and let him jerk you around and keep you broke for the rest of your life. Him changing is not going to happen, ever. If you stay with him, you are literally telling him that your word means nothing and that he can lie to you with impunity. Update. I, 32F, just found out my boyfriend, 36M, has been gambling behind my back and lost over $21,000. November 15th, 2024. I just wanted to post an update on my situation. Original post here. I gave it a lot of thought, and I decided to end things with him. We'll be giving our landlord 60 days notice, and for now I've moved back in with my parents. It was a really hard decision, and I feel horrible. I love him and miss him, but I couldn't trust him anymore and, ironically, couldn't take a gamble on my future. I hope I made the best decision, for him and for me. I want to thank everyone that reached out and gave me advice. It really helped and made me feel less alone in this. That's all for now. It's time to focus on myself for a little while. Notable comments. Kegbablicious. My parents were friends with another couple their age. The husband in that couple developed a gambling addiction in retirement and secretly gambled away their life savings, including their house. The wife only found out the extent of the damage once her husband died and she was left penniless. You are right to leave before he can access and lose your money. Ajwiunch, did you at least get to keep the puppy? OOP response. Yes, she's with me. The puppy cuddles and kisses make things a tiny bit easier, lol. Story 8. My sister-in-law pranked me by giving me alcohol knowing I don't drink. I feel like I'm spiraling about it. I, 29F, don't drink alcohol. The short answer to the reason for this is I grew with two highly abusive alcoholic parents. It took me a lot of self-work and therapy to even be able to be in the same room as people that are drinking. When I meet new people, I just politely turn down drinks by saying something along the lines of, I don't drink. There has obviously been some instances where people ask me why, but I never go into the traumatic details. I've never had anyone push it onto me or anything. That's what makes what happened last weekend so bizarre. On the second Saturday of every month, my husband, 30M, and his sister, 32F, throw a cookout or something along the lines for all of their childhood friends. I've always thought it was really cool that they stayed close with so many people since I myself moved away from home and only stay in contact with one friend from school. I've been attending these hangouts ever since my husband and I started dating. There's never been any issues. I get along well with his friends and his sister. Last Saturday, my husband took my 11-year-old little brother out of town for a dad-son day. We're his legal guardians. I've had custody of him since I was 20. So I went to the cookout alone this time. I've done this a couple times before. It's always been fine. So my Sael handed out the usual mimosas. I asked for just orange juice like always. When I took a sip of the drink she handed me, I immediately spit it out because I could taste champagne. I turned around to my Sael and said, "Oh, you must have given me your drink by mistake." When I turned, I noticed her and two of her friends laughing. I was so confused. I asked what was going on, and my SIL said through her giggles, "We thought it would be funny to see how you react to alcohol since we've never seen you drink it before. You should have seen your face." I was honestly just so shocked by that my only response was, "What the hell?" As they continued laughing, I just told them I was leaving. I honestly don't even remember that drive home because I was trying to keep myself from having a panic attack. When I finally got home, I just broke down crying. My husband and brother got home shortly after that, and I couldn't hide how I was feeling even if I wanted to. My husband immediately asked me what was wrong, and I just broke down again. I hate that my brother had to see me cry. I try to keep our house as happy and safe as possible. After I put on a movie for my brother, I explained what happened to my husband. He was so mad. I've never seen him like that before. He told me to go relax with my brother, and he was going to sort everything out. I could hear him yelling at his sister on the phone, and after almost an hour, he came and sat with us and told me we wouldn't be seeing her again. The next day, we told my mother and father-in-law. I've always been really close with them, so I wanted to confide in them, but I was obviously scared because that's their daughter, and I didn't want to talk bad about her to them. To my surprise, they were absolutely mortified and so apologetic on behalf of their daughter. I'm so glad because my little brother adores them. It would have been devastating if our relationship with them suffered because of this. So, yeah, this past week has been so weird. I feel weirdly betrayed. I hate that my Esiel and her friends used me as some sort of entertainment for the day. I know that they don't know the trauma this triggered inside of me, but I'm just so confused on why they thought that was an okay thing to do. I also feel guilty because I don't want my husband to stop going to the cookouts and lose his time with his friends. And I don't want him and his sister to never see each other again because of me. My husband is amazing and has assured me it wouldn't be my fault if they never speak again. It's just hard not to feel that way. Don't worry, though. I've had a lot of emergency therapy sessions this week, and I know I'll be okay. It was just such a bizarre thing to experience. It seems like such a small, inconsequential thing to have happened to me. But it's been a crash course on trauma, triggers, PTSD, etc. Typing it out has been so helpful. Thanks for listening to my ramblings. Top comments. Commenter 1. What the hell would make your sister-in-law think this was acceptable? I'm assuming she didn't know why you don't drink. What if you were in recovery or something and she triggered a relapse? Going no contact with her seems like the right thing to do. I'm sorry you had to go through that, and I'm happy to hear your husband and his parents aren't coddling their daughter. I'm wondering if she has a history of stuff like this, and that's why your in-laws were so immediately apologetic. Commenter 2. Some people like your SIL have no sense but have blessed with the privilege of never had a trauma touch them. They are frivolous and unserious people. They are malicious children. Let the go be frivolous and unserious people together. Grateful you have a strong support system in the form of your meal, Phil, and husband. Commenter 3. She seems like she would be cool with giving someone pot brownies and watching them trip out as a joke funny. Stay away from her, that's a scary person, OP. Commenter 4. In my experience, some people tend to get really weird and insistent when you say you don't drink. Like, I get how so many cultures have ingrained social drinking into their framework and all that, but it's incredibly off-putting how many people I've encountered who get genuinely offended that you don't. Hell, you'd think people like this would be appreciated more so they don't do something moronic like attempt to drive how after a night of heavy drinking. I'll never understand it. Update December 7th, 2024. Thank you to everyone that left me kind comments and messages on my previous post. I'll just get right into the update. A lot of you guessed right. This isn't the first time my SEL has done something like this. She is definitely what some would consider a mean girl. My husband and his parents have had multiple falling outs with her over the years, but they've been on good terms recently until she pranked me. So, yeah. I could see how my husband's immediate reaction to go no contact seemed like an overreaction, but he's dealt with a lot from her in the past. I don't want to give any specific examples because they're personal to my husband and his family. Hope you all understand. So here's what happened after my last post. After talking with my therapist and my husband, I decided I wanted to message my SIL. I asked her if she wanted to get lunch and talk about what happened. I wanted to explain some of my past to her, my PTSD diagnosis, and why what she did affected me so much. I just wanted this to be over and for us to come to an understanding. But she never responded. A couple of my husband's friends that were at the cookout when the prank happened called us to check in on me. They said they had no idea my SEL planned that and they never would have let it happen. That's probably why she didn't clue them in on the prank. They told me that after I left they told her it wasn't cool. After a couple of days, I just gave up hope of her messaging me back and decided to start moving on. Yesterday, my SIL blew up my husband's phone. She said some pretty awful things. To summarize, it was along the lines of, "It's not my fault your wife is a P*SSY that is scared of champagne." She called me a bunch of names, from everything to B*teach, C*enat, etc. She said she never liked me and she wished my husband stayed with his high school girlfriend. They broke up when they were 18 BTW. My husband is 30 LOL. The worst thing she said was, my husband was just doing charity by taking in a couple of orphans. If you don't remember, I have custody of my 11-year-old brother, and we don't have any contact with our parents because they're abusive. So, yeah, some pretty awful stuff. I was honestly just shocked. I thought we got along fine. We were never best friends or anything, but I had no idea she held this much animosity towards me. Maybe she's just embarrassed and lashing out because her parents or some of her friends berated her for it? I don't know. My husband sent just one message back to her saying he never wants to see or talk to her again, and then blocked her and her husband's numbers. He told his parents what happened, and they were furious too. I don't know what they said to her, but they're about as done as my husband. Since I've been in therapy and have support around me, her words didn't bother me much. I know she obviously has some problems to deal with, and I'm just her latest target. The worst thing she did was bring my brother up. I'll never forgive her for that. He's not an orphan. He has two parents that love him, and I'm not either. I have in-laws that love and support me. They always have my back, even when it comes to their own daughter. If I never see my Sil again, I'd be fine with that. I truly hope one day she'll come to her senses and understand the way she treats people isn't right. We've decided to turn every second Saturday of the month into family day in place of the cookouts. I'm going to be just fine. I'm already feeling miles better than I did writing my previous post. For everyone calling me dramatic, I'm genuinely glad you don't have experience with PTSD or triggers. I don't think it's funny to give someone alcohol without their consent, even if you know the person drinks. Anyway, again, thank you for all the kind words. I hope there will be no more updates, but if anything crazy happens, I'll let you know. Relevant. Top comments. Commenter 1. Sorry for all the conflict, but it does sound like it's working out okay. The idea of changing the cookout get-together days into family days is a great idea. If you and/or your husband is missing out on socializing with some of those friends, you guys can schedule your own times to get together with everyone. I understand why you wanted to explain more to your SIL so she would understand why this was so traumatic for you. But I think it's for the best that that conversation never happened. She sounds quite cruel. I don't think she would have had a sudden attack of empathy. If anything, she may have taken info you shared with her and used it to hurt you. Sometimes we think that if someone understands better, it'll solve the problem. But when you're dealing with someone like your SIL, it rarely goes that way. It's just giving them ammunition. This is something that I've had to learn myself. I think it's more common in those of us who have been victimized, perhaps, especially while growing up. We want to believe that if the person just knew something, understood something better, that they would stop their bad behavior. But that's not necessarily true, and we shouldn't be kissing their ass, which is how it can sometimes come across. It's important not to give our power away. OP. Wow, this comment made me tear up. Thank you for explaining it this way. It's genuinely very helpful. 3. Commenter 2. Your husband and his parents seem great. Don't feel guilty about Seal being cut off. She did that, not you. The only people you need in your life are those who support and respect you. Commenter 3. I am so happy to hear you are supported by your in-laws, parents. I'm glad it's been as resolved as it can be. I live with PTSD and I can imagine how this might have felt. Commenter 4. So pleased your husband and in-laws have your back. If she texted your husband with those nasty messages, keep them. And if it blows up further, show them. Story 9. I feel like my husband, 26M, puts things off until I, 26F, end up handling things myself. All to count because my husband is on Reddit? My husband and I have had a rocky relationship. It's been 3 years since we've been married, and I always hoped it would get a bit easier. I feel like we've tried a lot of different things to improve our relationship, but I often find myself feeling defeated and sad because it seems like nothing will ever change. Right now, we're in the process of moving. I stayed behind to finish things up at our house, and he's gone ahead to start working. We're literally starting from scratch. I sold everything, including our cars. We have to have a car, so I asked him to buy a car and have it ready for us once I'm ready to move. He's met me with so many excuses, and I'm just tired. I'm finally flying to meet him next week, and there's still no car. It's been a month. He mentioned to me offhand the other day that he was planning on buying a car once I fly in. But doesn't that defeat the purpose? All I asked was that he had one ready for when I arrived. I really don't want to go car shopping the second I get off the plane. I was excited and hopeful about the move. We talked about how things were going to change, and he seemed so motivated. But now I feel defeated again. I don't even feel angry anymore. What was I expecting? I'm not sure what advice I'm looking for. We get along pretty well when there aren't any big life decisions involved. He's a nice guy. I just don't trust him to take any responsibility in the relationship. I guess. Has anyone been in a similar relationship? How did it go? When was it finally enough for you? Is there anything that can change? I'm really interested in starting couples therapy, but I'm afraid of putting effort into something that might not even work. Additional information from OOP after seeing common questions. OOP, hi, thanks for commenting. Everyone has been really helpful so far. There was a time that my husband wouldn't help out with chores or bills. I was cooking, cleaning, and working full-time while he got to play games. I do think he's gotten better, but there are a lot of times that I still feel like I do more. I'm trying to be patient. I know people don't change overnight. It's just hard. I think I still have some hurt feelings from this time. Looking at it now, I think I thought if I asked him to do something more important, maybe he'd take it more seriously and be excited to contribute. I realize that it's a big decision, but I've always been willing to talk about the financials and other details about the purchase. I think I would have really appreciated seeing his effort in taking over this decision. I've talked to him since posting this, and we've gone over some more details about the purchase, and he's actually made an appointment to start looking for cars. I'm still not 100% if it's purely an anxiety thing or if he is just coasting along with me, but I'm planning on organizing my thoughts and talking openly about how this has made me feel once we're together. Thanks again. I've been thinking a lot about the situation. I appreciate it. Top comments. Commenter 1. It's called weaponized incompetence. Look it up. And either he learns to step up or you can dump his shitty ass. Commenter 2. We get along pretty well when there aren't any big life decisions involved. He's a nice guy. I just don't trust him to take any responsibility in the relationship. Exactly why he only needs to be your friend in life. He does not have what it takes to be in a relationship with you because you need more in a partner. Commenter 3. Regardless of the specific issue, it all really boils down to what you want for yourself and your marriage. Couples counseling is basically like any other form of counseling. It can only work if you actually want it to. If you are already at your wit's end and just don't have it in you to continue putting in effort to maybe not save your marriage, then there obviously isn't any point in pursuing couples counseling. If you still want the marriage to work out, then couples counseling would be a good idea as a last-ditch effort. Personally, I think that if you married someone you had a rocky relationship with all along in the hopes of having things magically change in the future, then you basically set yourself up for failure, and this is what you are experiencing more and more. You're only 26. You have your whole life ahead of you, and there are plenty of people in the world who won't give you the feeling that you are basically carrying the relationship alone. OP. Thanks for commenting. I'm not sure what I was expecting from counseling, but your comment has opened my eyes to how I should be approaching it. I'm going to take some time and really think about what is best for me and go from there. Thank you again. Update, November 30th, 2024, 3 years later. Hi Reddit. I made a post 3 years ago about my husband not taking the initiative when it came to purchasing a new car after a big move. My post didn't get too big, but I've always liked seeing updates, and a lot has changed in 3 years. So I decided to log back in and make my own. I don't know how to link the original, but please take a look at the post history if you want to see my first post. After making the post, my husband had made an appointment to go look at cars. I remember feeling really good about everything in that moment. I felt a huge relief knowing that this big thing was finally getting taken care of. When his appointment came, my husband called to tell me some good news. He had seen one car, decided it was good, and told me that this is the one we would be buying. While he was still in the dealership, I asked him to tell me the details like how much the interest was and how much the car cost. I asked him if he had compared it to Kelley Blue Book to see if it was a fair deal. My husband was kind enough to ask the salesman everything, but after each question he would add, "I'm sorry my wife is making this so difficult." I was pretty hurt and embarrassed by this, and told him so, but he said all my questions were frustrating and were slowing down the process of the one thing I had asked him to do. In the end, he decided to wait for me to arrive so that we could sign for the car together. I ended up getting picked up from the airport and taken straight to the car dealership. We got a good interest rate on the car, but we ended up overpaying by about $7,000. I should have said no to the car and just looked myself, but I was young and embarrassed and I felt like I wasn't being supportive. Thankfully, that car ended up being our only shared piece of property in our divorce. I didn't trust him to refinance the car, so I ended up taking it. We owed so much more money on the car than what it was worth that I couldn't get it refinanced for several months. I ended up trading it in, and even though I'm still in the hole financially because of it, I am so much happier now. We did try therapy before ultimately divorcing. My ex-husband was quite the prodigy. He was cured. His words, not mine, after a week. He said that he had it all figured out and didn't see the point in continuing. He also told me that he was the only one who had ever put any effort into the relationship, and that it was 100% my fault that we were divorcing. He told me that no one would ever love him again if I left, and that he might as well off himself, because there's no point in going on. When that didn't work, he said that no one would ever love me again, and that I was lucky that he has stayed around as long as he did. He then asked me if I would forge his signature on the divorce documents because I was basically forcing him to do it anyways. I did not. Anyway, I'm happy to report that he was successfully able to move on from the trauma I put him through. He's still around, but I've kept my distance because I can't be bothered, so I'm unsure of what he's up to. I was able to find someone after some time. My boyfriend is so kind. Sometimes I feel like it's too God to be true. Then again, I get Twitter-pated when he does simple things like taking out the trash, cooking, or maintaining a full-time job. So the bar's in hell. He's a great guy, and he does more than the bare minimum, I promise. Looking back, I knew that I wanted a divorce. I just wasn't ready to admit it. My ex-husband didn't love or respect me. I didn't put many details of the relationship in my first post, and I don't really feel the need to put it all out there now. But I know now that if someone truly loves you, they make sure you know. Thanks, Reddit, you were right. Relevant? Comment? Commenter 1. I didn't read the original post and feel like there's more to it. Usually when you delegate responsibilities, you have to let someone actually do the thing they're supposed to do. You can assist them with big mistakes, preferably by teaching them beforehand. But you can't become a micromanager or they'll never take the initiative in doing things themselves. Never feel like they can make decisions on their own, and they'll never learn anything. Having only this post to go by, I feel like the car was the wrong first responsibility to delegate if OP wasn't willing to let him do it, or willing to accept that he wouldn't do it as well as her. She ultimately wanted to be in charge and work out the details herself, and her husband being there was no different than her being there, which she eventually was. At the very least, they should have mutually agreed on a price they were willing to pay, what they needed in a car, and she should have left it at that. This was the wrong way to car shop for both of them. If there were more issues, then it sounds like divorce was right. It's just a very poor example for this singular post, since you can't ask a partner to make more decisions and take more initiative on their own, and then micromanage them when they try. OP should have started with something that carried less financial risk, but if the marriage was a dud anyways, so it is what it is. OP. I didn't post many details on either post, so it's definitely a very small glimpse into our relationship. I'm not here to air out all of our dirty laundry, so I guess you'll just have to trust me when I say that this man did nothing. Ever. I don't even think I micromanaged him. He spent more time arguing with me that I was taking too long packing our apartment than looking for cars. I think his exact words were, "I could have done it in a weekend, and it's taken you a month. I just don't think you love me that much because you're not trying to be with me fast enough." Even with the little things, he did nothing. I delegated him to take out the trash once, and it sat by the front door for an entire week before I finally decided to take it out myself. Imagine my surprise when he said he was just about to do it. Yeah, right. But maybe I could have let him learn from his mistakes more, teach him beforehand. Believe me, I cried, begged, bargained, and eventually just gave up on this man. My mistake was definitely thinking that he would suddenly care and change his behavior. I think in the back of my mind, I just needed that one extra instance of him not caring about anything for us to finally leave the relationship. It was never actually about the car. Commenter 2. He wouldn't even sign the papers. He wanted you to do that, too? Girl, I'm so glad you got out. This stuff is hard to see when you're in it. OP, I was appalled when he asked me to sign for him. Like, sweetie, no. You can sign your own damn divorce papers. Commenter 3. They may have been incompatible. It sounds like OP micromanaged him when he was supposed to be making decisions on his own. That doesn't work. If you micromanage someone, they will take less initiative, learn less, and make less decisions on their own. They should have discussed what car they wanted, agreed on a price, and agreed he'd shop within those boundaries. Telling him to do it and then micromanaging him when he tried isn't the way to do things. I don't blame her for wanting to prevent a bigger financial risk, but she was married to the guy. Surely she would have known he didn't know how to buy a car and that not discussing anything beforehand was the wrong move. Why not ask him to lead something with less financial risk, like painting a guest room or buying new kitchenware first? OP. He had most definitely bought cars before meeting me, and since I was the one who organized all of our living arrangements, at the time I felt it was fair to assign him the car. But I do agree that a more mature conversation could have helped in general. Our relationship at that point lacked a lot of respect and had a lot of resentment built up, but I don't feel the need to dive into all that. And as far as skills go, I think the skills he lacked were basic life skills. But I digress. I hope he can find someone with more patience than me to teach him how to be a functional adult. Story 10. Dad got a ticket for speeding to church. He's making my F-16 brother, M11, pay for it with his allowance. Right off the bat, I want to say that my brother is autistic. He struggles to get ready on his own and takes a long time getting dressed or washing up, and Mom usually has to step in and help him. Dad doesn't like getting to church after it starts, and usually yells at us to get ready when Mom takes a while helping him. Dad got a ticket last Sunday for speeding to church and said it was their fault for not getting ready in time. He yelled at Mom in the car afterwards and my brother when we came home, but it's not like he's not trying it, just takes him a little longer. I'm posting because Dad punished him and said he wouldn't take him to his weekend basketball class for a while because my brother's excited to get dressed on time for basketball and not church, and he said that that meant basketball was an idol before God. He also said he's not getting allowance until he says so because he's going to pay for the ticket with it too. This is just one of many things he does, and I'm posting because Mom didn't want to talk about it. Is there anything that can change Dad's mind, because it's not like he's trying to do it on purpose, and Dad doesn't want to talk about it to anyone? February 10th, 2024. Update post. I don't have much of an update besides what happened today, Saturday, and last Saturday. Dad kept his word about not bringing my brother to basketball this Saturday and last, and he hasn't received allowance the past 2 weeks either. Dad also had a family meeting after dinner where he said that the ticket wasn't the main thing, but that there would be changes because God wasn't first in our family, because other things were an idol before God. In regards to my brother's allowance in basketball, he said both were done until he saw changes, but he also said no hangouts, shoot-around with his basketball friends either. He also said I'm done with my evening tennis classes for the same reason, and he said he didn't care about having paid for them when I asked about money being wasted. He didn't say anything was changing in his life, though. During the time that we would have had classes, he said we were going to start family Bible study instead because we seemed more excited about other hobbies, like basketball, instead of God church. But he didn't apologize for speeding at all. And what kid wouldn't be more excited about basketball than going to church, too? A few people asked about my mom in my first post, and I want to add that Dad yells at her, too. I also didn't add this in my first post, but my brother has other special needs in addition to autism that make him need my mom to help him with things. Some people said my brother was wrong for not getting dressed on time for church compared to basketball, but I disagree because Mom wakes him up on Sunday after setting her alarm. She helps him wash up and get dressed, but Dad never helps and makes Mom cook breakfast too, so she's running around like crazy as Dad yells and sometimes curses. Mom also has to iron Dad's clothes along with my brother's. I prepare my own. I offered to help iron choose his clothes the night before, but Dad always said no and that Mom's supposed to help him. Mom also doesn't want me to help, and is usually quiet whenever Dad yells at her, and sometimes she seems depressed, but doesn't say anything. My brother has an easier time getting ready for basketball because it's in the afternoon when he's already awake, without Dad yelling, making Mom cook breakfast and iron. I'm going to see one of my relatives over the President's Day weekend, so I'll talk to them in person. I also decided not to tell anyone at church because I'm afraid of them telling Dad and us getting punished more. I just hate the idea of having to pretend to be more excited about going to church than other hobbies to please Dad, and I hate being punished because Dad wants to play mind games about what's number one in our lives and such. It's not the first time we've done family Bible study. We did many years ago before we stopped and kind of forgot. So I hope it passes with time, but it seems like we're done with sports for this semester. Comments from the Post. Spinner oaf yarn. You're exactly right about getting in an accident due to speeding. You all could have been hurt by his choice to speed. The ticket is his fault. He chose to speed. If it's so important to him to not be late, he could have left without anyone who wasn't ready. He is the parent. He knows his child has difficulties getting ready, so he could and should have started helping his child earlier so he wasn't late. Your father had choices to get the outcome he wanted without speeding. It's unfair to your brother to be made to pay the ticket. Your father isn't taking responsibility for his actions. OP replied to Spinner of Yarn, He doesn't help my brother get dressed at all and just leaves it to Mom. Schedule Emotional 467. Does your father not realize he may be creating an issue where your brother may resent God, or when he older even resent him? I know people who parents forced them to church and such. It caused them to walk away from their faith. Story 11. Working with a very misogynistic man completely annihilated my sex drive. Hi. I hope that by sharing this I might get some advice and insight as it's taking a big toll on my relationship. I'm not trying to get into all the details because it would be too long, but here's the context. I work with my partner in his business, and 2 years ago he hired a man who was seemingly perfectly nice and normal. Turned out he was the most misogynistic person I've ever met, to the point that even our male co-workers were sometimes put off or shocked by the things he said. The worst part is probably that at the beginning I really liked him, and we were friendly, and I felt incredibly betrayed when I realized the deep-seated hatred that he had towards women. Makes me feel like I'll never be able to trust a man ever again. To give a few examples of his behavior, he once told us that he showed funny animated videos of DV to the women he went on a first date with, and showed us these videos. He said that he hoped that his future wife's father would be dead so he could do everything he wanted with her. Called female customers whores because they were wearing tank tops, said that women actually liked being dominated, and even hit because they enjoy violence in bed. There was something like that every fucking damn day. It ended up driving me literally crazy, to the point that I didn't even want to go to work anymore. He was also constantly checking the way I dressed, and if it was modest enough for his liking. He kept interrupting me, shutting me down, was weirdly passive-aggressive, and if he had a bad day, I knew that I needed to avoid him because he would take it out on me. It sometimes felt like I was in a toxic relationship with him, even though I was married to his boss. It took months for my husband to fire him even though he could see how toxic the workplace had become. I am the only woman working there, and because men apparently can't help behaving like sheep, the other male co-workers that I previously liked ended up imitating some of the behavior, as if him being misogynistic suddenly made it okay for them to talk and behave the same way. It took me telling my husband that he had to choose between working with me or this dude for him to finally react and fire him. This plus evenings and evenings of arguing over that, and a lot of tears from me. From my husband's perspective, he disliked his behavior, but he was an efficient employee. I also think that deep down, he could tolerate it to some degree since he wasn't the target of the nastiness this dude spouted. He doesn't work with us anymore, and it's been 6 months now, but I don't feel the same. My husband recognizes that he should not have allowed this behavior in the workplace. He did not participate, though, and that it was harmful. But I'm now hyper-aware of things that I used to overlook/ignore/not see, and I watch content creators like Burban Boogie and Eve _edit all the time. I learn a lot, I try to educate others, but my perspective on men has shifted and I don't know if it can ever be repaired. And I've lost all sex drive. I don't feel like I can trust men. Even the good ones don't intervene or stop these cruel and vile behaviors. At best, they pretend not to hear. At worst, they participate and encourage them. Has something like that happened to one of you? How can you move on, forgive, and not put all of them in the same basket? I don't want to destroy my relationship because of this bad experience. Relevant comment? Jade 0 Set Cat 13. I think it's completely reasonable that you're having a hard time moving past that, especially since it sounds like your husband directly enabled this guy to treat you like shit for months. It's kind of sickening to me that he didn't take it seriously enough to do anything, even after seeing how much you were affected by it. But I don't know the details of your relationship. I just wanted to say it doesn't sound like you're unreasonable or overreacting at all. Your husband and the other men around you did act awful and misogynist when given the opportunity, and it makes 100% sense for you to not be attracted to someone who is capable of that. Don't feel bad about that, and please don't force yourself to do anything you're not comfortable with. OOP, I know and I agree. He has apologized and now makes sure that it won't happen again. He has hired 2 other guys since then and told them the first day. We're working with women, with POC, etc. We don't tolerate discrimination here. He has even terminated a guy who was on trial period because he was starting to show signs that things might follow the same path. So I'd say that he takes some accountability and is trying to do better. But holy shit, I really struggle to move on. Especially because for him, I should be over it since the problem was fixed. But I'm not. I feel like it should have been a bigger deal sooner. I feel like the men I'm working with, including my husband, should have reacted without needing me to basically implore them to see how wrong it was. My husband is victim blaming me, and I'm done. December 2nd, 2024. Kinda needed to make a post about it, because this sub has helped me tremendously before understand that I wasn't crazy. I've posted a few weeks ago about the abuse directed at me that my husband allowed in our workplace. For a reminder, I work in his business. I'm an employee, it doesn't belong to me, and a guy that worked for him for 2 years ended up harassing me, targeting me with misogynistic, cruel jokes. You're useless because you don't have kids, for example, when I have infertility problems, something he doesn't know but is deeply painful for me. Plus making awfully dehumanizing comments about women in general. It took 6 months of tears, of endless discussions, and finally a threat of me leaving the workplace for my husband to finally fire him. I thought he'd learn, but he didn't. He has hired another guy. The other guy has started doing very shady stuff too, like telling me to bugger off the way after only 3 days. My native language isn't English, and I don't know if bugger off is as rude as it is in my language. It might actually be closer to something like, get the fuck out off my way. Repeatedly, plus jokingly asking my husband in front of me, is she always that annoying, or is she just on her period? Maybe I should add that this dude's favorite game is to pretend to hit me in the face with his fist, elbow, or shoulder, multiple times, in front of my husband. I know I'm probably an enabler. I know I freeze in these situations because I don't know how to react. Same exact reaction I had when I was rap *** as a preteen. I know I'm weak, but I didn't expect my husband to just stand there again doing nothing, and to tell me that there must be something wrong with you if it keeps happening to you. Why does it only happen to you? It kills me to hear someone I love tell me that men abuse me because they feel that I'm weak and that somehow makes me responsible for the abuse. My husband is much older than me. I've met him when I was only 20. He gave me a job, a place to live, lied a lot, dismissed a lot of my complaints when he was doing hurtful things to me. I feel gaslighted by everyone since so many people have told how he's such a great guy, how lucky I am, etc. But I don't feel lucky. I've verbally vomited everything to my parents about this and more, and thankfully, they're ready to welcome me into their house and to take care of me until I find another job place to live. I think I've been emotionally abused for 10 years, and I didn't even notice. When I've realized that I had infertility problems and wanted to try because I was so scared that I might never be able to get pregnant, he kept playing an awfully malicious game. 1 month he'd tell me we were going to try, and the month after he'd tell me he had changed his mind. It almost made me physically sick, until I finally decided to give up on having children. Sorry for being so messy in this post. Thank you for the support I've received before. Relevant comment. Plant Daddy 289. Maybe I should add that this dude's favorite game is to pretend to hit me in the face with his fist, elbow, or shoulder, multiple times, in front of my husband. What the actual fuck? The fact that this is happening in the first place and that your husband doesn't seem to care is so alarming. Make a plan and get out of there as soon as possible. None of what you described is normal or healthy. OOP, thank you. I've normalized so many things that I feel crazy most of the time. I've spent hours and hours trying to explain extremely simple things, like it hurts that nobody says anything, including you, when a coworker tells me to fuck off because I've asked a minor thing, and he seemed unable to understand. It felt like constantly trying to solve a puzzle. It drove me crazy. I can't even begin to explain. Yesterday, I've told my parents that I wanted to get into a mental institution and to close my eyes, lie down, and wait until I finally feel better. Or just go to bed and not wake up. They're amazing, though. They told me that I could just go to their house and take all the time I need to get better. And these days it's about what's happening at work, but before that it was other things. He keeps lying and lying and lying, and I keep trying to reason with him. Yesterday I broke down, and he told me that I needed to forgive myself. I'm escaping before I officially lose my mind. Audacious amoeba, what the fuck is wrong with your husband? This loser does not seem to care about you at all. And depending on how old he was when you met, that's a big red flag. 20 is still very young. Leave his ass as soon as you can. Don't tell him. Just do it. You deserve and are worth so much more. It sounds like your family is giving you an escape hatch. Please take it. OP. I was 20, he was 39, and in the middle of a divorce. Made me go through hell. And I mean it. I remember us making love one day, and right after, while he was stroking my hair, he told me that him and I, it would be never as good as it was with his ex-wife. I was gutted, but also just very used to the highs and lows. I'd beg him to stop being hurtful. He'd tell me that I was annoying, and then he'd tell everyone around him that I was crazy, and acted very nicely after a few days. I escaped the relationship twice. I moved to another country once, and he came begging me and my parents, making all sorts of promises that he obviously never kept once I was back. Sorry for dumping everything, but it helps. Feeling_wheel_1612. What kind of business is this? Husband or not, no halfway decent manager would allow this kind of behavior in the workplace. OP. My husband is both the owner and the manager. It's a restaurant, to be precise. Small team, and he works with us every day. OP replied to a comment with her husband gaslighting her on their marriage. OP, yes, worn down. Yesterday, while he was again telling me that there was something wrong with me and that I should learn to forgive myself, I've kind of realized that I was too exhausted to try to defend myself, to explain myself, to reason with him. It always ends up with me feeling like my world is upside down. While he moves on with his day and disappears at his mom's house for a while, I'm completely empty and ready to move on, I think. Story 12. HR won't do anything about a coworker who's angry about my weight loss. I just came back to work after a month-long emergency medical leave. The TL.R is that after a decade of medical gaslighting, a new doctor ordered an emergency MRI during a routine visit and discovered a mass in my abdomen. I was rushed into surgery within 24 hours. I ended up having an 18-pound benign tumor pressing on my vital organs, and I was about a week away from multiple organ failure. I'm lucky to be alive, and time will tell if I have any lasting organ damage, but right now everything is fine. Mentally, I'm struggling with a few things, but the only outwardly noticeable impact is that I've gone from a size 20 to a size 8. Nobody on my medical team anticipated a change this drastic, but I'm healthy and lucky. I was expecting to get a lot of questions from my coworkers because curiosity exists. I had a basic emergency surgery, but I'm fine now answer that almost everyone accepted but one coworker who I hardly speak to, Aubrey. On my first day back to work, Aubrey came up to me and said, "I wish you had come to me to lose the weight instead of resorting to such drastic measures. You're going to gain it all back, you know. I'll be waiting." I was aware of Aubrey's reputation, but since we never worked together, I didn't think it would be an issue. She's one of those people who think they're a fitness expert and calls herself a health coach, nothing to do with the company we work for. She has a reputation for giving out unsolicited and incorrect health advice and is always commenting on people's food choices. I was speechless when she asked why I opted to get butchered instead of putting in the hard work to lose the weight. There's nothing wrong with someone choosing surgical weight loss options, but that's not what happened to me, and I really resented her aggressive attitude spreading rumors. During my second week back, She came by my office at the end of the day in athletic gear, offering to go with me if I was too afraid to go to the gym alone. At the time, I wasn't even cleared to lift my kid, do laundry, or climb a flight of stairs, let alone go to the gym with this crackpot. I don't remember what I said to her, but she left saying I'd gained the weight back because I'm lazy. The next day, Aubrey ranted angrily about me in a meeting I wasn't in. Missed it for a follow-up, ironically. I don't know everything that was said, but the gist was that if I can't dedicate myself to weight loss, I obviously can't see my work obligations through. HR called for a red flag mediation. At our company, mediation can go against your bonus opportunities for the year. I have no idea why I'm in mediation when she's the one being an asshat. At the mediation, Aubrey stated that she was triggered by my new body, and I should have thought of other people's feelings and warned her before my surgery. I hardly had time to warn my husband and get my kid out of daycare. I don't owe Aubrey anything. I have empathy that she's obviously struggling, but that does not excuse her behavior. HR said that while they can't ask me to explain my medical history, it might clear the air if I told her what kind of surgery I had and why. I said I wasn't obligated to share my medical information with anyone and that Aubrey having bad coping skills doesn't entitle her to a co-worker's personal health information. Their response was kind of, "Well, then we can't stop her from bullying you." After Thanksgiving, my doctor helped me put in ADA accommodation paperwork so I could work from home. I was having some mild complications from surgery, but also to avoid Aubrey. This company hates remote work, so they're really not happy. Aubrey still emails me workout videos and diet plans, and when I forward them to HR, their response is, "Noted. Do you know when you're coming back to the office? I've been thinking about escalating this to corporate with an employment lawyer. Is that overkill? I'm still in a sensitive place after my surgery, and I have no energy for this, especially since Aubrey is fixated on weight loss, which was the primary way doctors gaslit me for years. I've been with this company for 5 years, and I'm just exhausted and disappointed in how they're handling this, and I want it over yesterday." Update 2. April 17th, 2023. All I have to say for this update is hold on to your banana pants. I saw a lot of comments asking where management was in all this, so I'll address that first. My boss, George, was getting ready to retire while this was going on. George is roughly my grandfather's age, so this entire situation bewildered both him and his replacement, who he was training at the time. Both of them met with Aubrey's boss, because believe me, I was documenting everything she did from the jump, and they all assured me that Aubrey would be dealt with. None of them recommended the red flag mediation. That was HR's idea. I was given details of the meeting where Aubrey ranted about me, and it was horrible. But apparently Aubrey was asked to leave by her own boss while several other employees told her to stop, so managerially and in the office in general, people were trying to rein her in from many different angles. HR is where the ball dropped and dropped hard. This company just has a poor HR structure and bad entry to mid-level HR. When Aubrey's boss referred her to HR regarding her negative behavior, HR took it upon themselves to consider it a mediation situation, which, remember, at our company can go against your bonus for the year, despite communication from George, his replacement, and Aubrey's boss saying I wasn't in the wrong. When George found out about this, he spoke to the HR generalist's manager, who said that my absence probably caused a lot of strain and extra work for Aubrey, when Aubrey's not even credentialed to do what I do. Management made a point to tell me how baffled and upset they were with HR's handling of the situation every time something came up. My company mentor was also a huge support during this time until she decided to take another job elsewhere. When my doctor extended my ADA work-from-home accommodation a second time, HR responded by telling me my attendance was a concern. I emailed their boss's boss, the HR director, and asked for clarification. He said I hadn't come into the office, so of course my attendance was a problem. I reiterated I had medical documentation stating that if WFH wasn't available, then they could refer to the FMLA documentation my medical team also sent. He replied that medical documentation, including both FMLA and ADA reasonable accommodations, doesn't hold much weight with the company. That's when I got a lawyer. Aubrey as a problem kind of drifted to the background when HR started their medical documentation doesn't matter campaign. On my lawyer's recommendation, I contacted the HR executive team, which is where this whole cursed situation came to light. And I did check with my lawyer about emailing this update, and they laughed and said I couldn't leave people hanging after all that. I called the chief HR officer, which for my company is going over like 5 people's heads, but I did it with George's and my new boss's blessings, who is the head of HR, and asked why my attendance was an issue when I had reasonable ADA documentation. She had no idea what I was talking about, so I filled her in on all of it, including the mediation meeting and Aubrey's harassment and the HR director, her direct report, saying medical documentation didn't hold any weight with the company. She was speechless and asked to meet with me and my lawyer as soon as possible. My lawyer hardly had to do anything during the meeting because the CHRO was horrified at everything I told her. I've never actually seen steam come out of someone's ears, but if it was physically possible, it would have happened here. My lawyer didn't need to say a word, but just nodded and smiled when the CHRO offered an extended paid medical leave so I could handle my recovery, and said Aubrey constantly sending me fitness plans would be dealt with swiftly. I didn't hear anything out of Aubrey for a long time, but I did hear through some gossip channels that the HR staff involved in the red flag meeting, threatening to write me up, were let go. Aubrey wasn't fired because they believed she was misled by HR, so I understand that part even if I don't agree with it, but she was on a tight PP for a while. Then she showed up at my house. Now we move from banana pants to full-on banana ensemble. I'm still on leave, and out of the blue, Aubrey showed up at my door on a weekend with 2 other women in tow, and the commenters guessed it. She's in very deep with an MLM, or maybe a cult, I can't be sure at this point. Aubrey came over to demonstrate some workout techniques and give me some diet supplement samples and discuss a career opportunity, because she was worried about my physical and professional health. She didn't make it past my mother-in-law, who has been a godsend right now. My mother-in-law made it clear where Aubrey could stick her demonstration, and they left in a hurry. I notified my lawyer and the CHRO, and suffice it to say, Aubrey is now a full-time wellness coach. I'm happy I went with my gut and got a lawyer because the company has changed so drastically over the last year with the toxic HR department encouraging behavior like Aubrey's and spreading false information about medical leave and time off. The company is almost unrecognizable. Also, with my boss and mentor both gone, I don't know if I'm going to go back once I'm medically cleared. The company is also undergoing a restructuring right now, and my department may end up distributed between other parts of the company or even other parts of the state. I have been looking at jobs and doing some resume drafting for a full-time remote position since it feels like it might be a better fit. But many thanks to the comment section and all the support. Final update. June 12, 2023. I got an offer from a local company that's going fully remote with administration and management meeting up once a month. The salary was right. It's 90% remote. It's a good fit, so I'm happy with it. My role is HR adjacent as head of payroll. I report to the COO and was hired by the CEO and COO. I walk into our first admin meeting, and who is sitting across from me? But the HR director who told me medical documentation doesn't matter and orchestrated my red flag meeting. Let's call him Bob. Bob is the interim HR director for this company. Bob looked very uncomfortable when he saw me. We went through some employee files, including several who were on maternity leave and 2 who were injured on a job site. Bob got quieter as we began reviewing medical documentation and approving paid leave. I smiled and looked him in the eye every time I asked, "And does Jill have her medical documentation?" "Great. Medical documentation holds a lot of weight. That's important stuff to have." He looked like he wanted to melt into his seat. At one point, he tried to argue against someone using their PTO to provide end-of-life care for a parent when they had ample PTO. I smiled and said, "You're right. Our employee support fund should cover half this time. It's a shame for them to have to lose all their PTO when they're obviously going to need it to heal and grieve over the next few months. Why don't you get me the paperwork for the support fund this afternoon?" "That's so generous." Everyone was happy and in agreement. He looked like he swallowed a lemon, but everyone was like, "OMG Bob, how thoughtful." He had to eat it so bad and got me the documentation an hour later. Bob can suck it. Bob is also only a contractor, so he'll be moving on soon anyway. Medically, I'm doing better and very happy to move on from where I was. Aubrey's been full-on radio silence, which is perfect for me. Thanks AAM team and commenters. Story 13. OOP's husband accuses her of baby-trapping him with a planned baby, loses everything. Originally posted in AITA but was removed by the mods. My husband, M35, and I, F32, have been married for 7 years. He lived next door and we just clicked. It was like a fairy tale. One thing I have always thought made our marriage so strong was our friendship with each other and our trust in one another, although now my husband seems to think otherwise. Recently, my husband found out that his friend Jeff, M34, has been baby-trapped. Basically, Jeff's wife, F32, stopped taking the pill and fell pregnant a few months into their relationship and only came clean after the wedding. Jeff came from a very conservative family, which his wife knew, and so he felt obligated to marry her after the pregnancy. Unfortunately, he also now feels obligated to stay regardless of the clearly messed-up dynamic because he feels that he has made a vow and will stick by his wife and child. My husband, for some reason, has been really rattled by this. I am currently 4 months pregnant with our first, and my husband asked me yesterday if I was trying to baby-trap him. I first laughed because I honestly thought it was a joke. He was dead serious and doubled down, so I told him that we have already been married for 7 years and a baby was not going to trap him any more than he already is. My husband did not like that answer and said that there was no time limit on baby trapping, and that my intentions were clearly not pure, given how I was acting as if his concerns were a joke. He said he had trusted me in the past, but me laughing in his face gave him no reason to trust me now. I did not really know what he wanted or how I was meant to respond, and I said we should talk about this in the morning. Today I woke up and my husband was gone, but I did have a nasty text from his brother, M28, saying that I had forced my husband into this pregnancy, despite it having been a joint decision. My husband is MIA and not responding to calls or texts, and now I am wondering how on earth to go forward. Any advice is appreciated. The update, Feb 04, 2023. Not sure if I am allowed to post in here again, but I wanted to quickly update everyone who was kind enough to give me some advice. I didn't respond to anyone because my post was locked quite quickly, but I have read every single comment and message. I am very grateful. I realized while I was reading the comments that everyone was right. I wasn't angry enough. My husband had insulted me and our marriage in a very hurtful way, and it just didn't really register for a while. I was so confused and upset that it didn't occur to me to be angry, but I think everything just needed to sink in. In the meantime, I called my best friend, F31, who has been such a rock in my life. She came over with some chocolate and was furious when she heard. She called her husband, M34, to the house after I had gotten everything out of my system. He is a family lawyer, and he said that he would happily represent me if I wanted to go through with a divorce. This man is a saint and will draw up divorce papers on Monday. My mill F66 showed up with my husband in the car not long after my best friend's husband arrived, and she practically dragged him to the door. My mill said that he had showed up at theirs late last night saying that he was certain that I was using the baby to trap him. Fortunately, my MIL is a smart woman and absolutely tore him a new one before dragging him to the house today to apologize. My worm of a husband did not look me in the eye the entire time, but said that he was scared about becoming a dad and projected his fears onto me. He said he wasn't sure if he was ready for that kind of commitment, but he will step up, as if he is some kind of hero. Eye roll. I called him a coward and told him that he should stay with his parents until I am ready to talk to him. I didn't want to say anything about the divorce papers because I didn't know what his reaction would be, but he will find out soon enough. I also showed my mill the text from my bill, and her face was like a storm cloud. I don't know what will happen there, but I am sure it will be bad. For now, I am exhausted and just want to curl up and cry. My best friend has said she'll spend the night with me and we can watch silly movies. I have also made an appointment with a therapist for next week, but for now, I just need to rest. I am exhausted and devastated that my marriage has come crumbling down. Sorry for the sad ending, everyone. New update, February 13th, 2023. Thank you to everyone for all the messages and kind pieces of advice. I have received so many requests for an update, so I thought I would quickly post and let you all know how I am doing. Overall, everything has settled a little bit. In good news, I had a scan with the doctor my MIL attended with me, and the baby is happy and healthy. I finally found out the gender. I am having a little girl. I am over the moon. My MIL was a gem and was so touched that I had included her in the scan. She is very excited to be a granny. On that note, my MIL organized a family lunch a couple of days after the scan. I was a little reluctant, but I knew that she had good intentions and wouldn't do anything to make matters worse. When I arrived, my husband and Bill were there, along with my FIL, M70, and MIL. It was quite awkward until my MIL asked if anyone had anything to say. My BL spoke first and apologized for his awful text, saying that he was swept up in the moment and wanted to support his brother. I explained how hurtful it had been to receive such a nasty and vindictive message, and that he knew as well as anyone that my husband and I had been trying for almost a year. He hung his head and mumbled something. That was pretty much the last I heard out of him for the afternoon. Next, my MIL looked quite pointedly at my husband, but he actively avoided anyone's eyes. Eventually, she spoke up and announced that my husband would no longer be welcome to stay in their house. She said that she was ashamed to have her son behave the way that he has, and that she would prefer to make space for her granddaughter rather than have some lowlife hanging around. My husband had opened up his mouth to say something earlier, but his eyes lit up when she said granddaughter. My husband had always wanted a girl, and he was suddenly in tears, saying that he was so pleased to hear the gender. My husband was suddenly wanting to touch my belly and asked if he could come home and paint the nursery. I told him in no uncertain terms that he was not welcome, and that he had destroyed any trust I had in him. I told him that if I took him back, I would be worried that he would disappear at any kind of big news, and that I couldn't have someone at my side who balked at the first chance. He asked me if I was telling him it was over, and I point-blank told him that I had engaged a lawyer. My husband was kind of frantic, but I felt so calm, like someone had put a blanket over me in the situation. Normally I'm a big crier, but I felt so removed from everything. My husband said that this was not fair. He had shown a little bit of panic, and suddenly I am throwing away our life and denying him his daughter. My FIL reminded him that this is the same baby he felt trapped by no more than 2 weeks ago. My husband said it was a mistake and he was stressed, but my MEL asked him how he thought I felt. She asked him to imagine being so vulnerable and giving up your body to grow a family, and suddenly the one person you trust is accusing you of terrible things. He said it was a mistake, and he projected his fears onto me. I told my husband that I felt so broken when he left because I had all these dreams of a beautiful family which came crashing down in an instant. My husband said that he wanted those things with me, and he wanted our baby girl, but that he let the panic overwhelm him. I told him that wasn't a good enough excuse for what he put me through, and that he certainly didn't seem panicked when his mom had to drag him to my door to apologize. He didn't have much of an answer other than to say that he was ready now and wanted our girl. In all of this, and all the times he told me he wanted me and our baby, he never once apologized properly. After a very, very long discussion, the lunch wrapped up and my MIL stood by what she had said about my husband not being welcome. He asked again if he could come home with me, and I told him that it was my house. I owned the house before we married, and it was going to be a safe space for me. That is to say, he is not welcome. As far as I know, he is staying at some hotel. Finally, he was served divorce papers at work on Friday. My bestie's husband drafted them earlier, but I wanted to wait until I had thought it all through. I received a few missed calls and crying voicemails asking if I was really throwing away our family, but I did not respond. He even took a crying selfie sitting in his car, which my bestie laughed at quite a bit. My Mill called me when she heard and told me that I am making the right decision. She said she never wanted my marriage to end this way or for her son to be so callous, but she said she is here for my baby and I, and that we will always be family. She even tried to apologize on my husband's behalf, but I told her that was not necessary, At the end of the day, his actions are his to own. My best friend has been around all weekend, and we went baby clothes shopping for a little bit of sunshine in all of this. She has been such a rock, and her husband has helped so much with the process. I don't know what will happen next, but I feel much calmer and like I am making the right decision. I will update again if anything major or exciting happens, but for now, I just want to get through all of this and hopefully come out with a beautiful baby girl. Wish us luck reminder. I am not the original poster. Do not comment on linked posts. Story 14. My 42F husband, 42M, has informed me he intends to go on a gaycation with his BIL, 35M, in Ibiza. How do I handle this? Hi there, I really wish I didn't have to make this post, but here goes. So me and my husband have been happily married for about 16 years, give or take. We both have stable careers, good family life, and are fairly fortunate despite the cost of living racking the UK right now. We have 2 boys, 15 and 10, and up until this Sunday thought we had it pretty good. We argue sometimes, of course, but never gotten too bad, and we have a pretty decent sex life with some exploration, but I won't get into that. Long and short is, on Sunday, just after I dropped our boys off at their friends', my husband asked me if we had the house alone, and more importantly, do I have a minute? I said yes, and he sat me down, then got out this printed poster for some sort of orgy, and started explaining to me the concept of a gaycation. How it's where straight men go to somewhere with sun, sand, and booze and become gay for the duration of the trip. But that's fine because it doesn't actually count, because what happens on the gaycation stays on the gaycation. I was just completely silent and mortified, even more so when he said he was looking into booking a trip to Ibiza next year with his BL, his sister's husband, to experience it for himself. When he finally let me speak, I just said, I need him to be clear with me. Is he gay? Because if yes, that's okay, but we need to figure out what happens going forward. I didn't let myself get angry or upset. I was just stunned. He swore up and down how he's not gay and he's 100% attracted to women and of course still loves me and our boys. So I said, well, do you think you're bi maybe? And he got very defensive, saying how I need to drop the accusations and that this is the beauty of the gaycation. It allows straight men to experience gayness without actually being gay, and how it's like going to an aquarium. And again, he was adamant he doesn't find men's bodies or genitalia exciting at all, but he needs to experience this apparently. I said, well, I'm really not comfortable because even if he was bi, this would be explicitly cheating on me, and he got angry and reiterated he's not because that's the beauty of the gaycation, etc. I just had enough and left the room. I ignored him for the rest of the day, but we spoke at tea where I again asked him, why does he want to do this so bad if he's not gay? He said how he's interested in how gay men's lives differ to straight men's, and that unfortunately, once the gaycation begins, it's simply impossible for a man to resist, and he must surrender himself, mind, body, and soul to the gaycation or be destroyed. I really can't put into words how surreal it was, because he was speaking so matter-of-factly, and he again insists this is a thing that straight men do all the time and how he's actually doing it a bit late. I just said to him if he has any love for me, then he can't go ahead with this, and if he does, the marriage will be dead. We didn't speak any more after that. Since then, he's mentioned no more of it, but somehow, and this is what scares me a lot too, that decision genuinely seems to be tearing him up. He didn't go into work on Monday, and only went in half a day yesterday, because he told them he just felt too ill and he just looks distraught every time I see him. I really don't think he's wholly gay, though I can absolutely believe he's bi, but I'd rather we talked about that in a healthy way rather than this incredibly weird denialism around going on a sex holiday to Ibiza. Has anyone known straight guys to do this and come back and just go back to being straight? Like, surely that can't be a thing that happens. I'm so out of my depth here, and I just don't know how to even initiate the conversation. For the record, I also haven't mentioned it to his sister yet. I don't know how I'd even break it to her. Thanks for any help. I just don't even want to think so. Being able to get this out there has helped even just a little bit. Edit. Wow, this blew up. This has been incredibly sobering, and I think I've now confirmed what I already knew to be the case. The marriage is dead. one way or another. In a way, I was in denial myself about that. I have contacted my SIL, and she initially screamed at me, calling me a liar, and even insinuated I was trying to steal her husband. She rang me back shortly after, apologized, and admitted she was in deep, deep shock. I have asked my parents to look after the boys, and we're going to meet tomorrow to discuss this deeper. I have also texted my husband and told him he will need to make alternative accommodation arrangements, but he will not be sleeping here tonight, and a bag will be waiting for him. Not sure if the mods want to lock the post or not, but I think I've got my answers. Thank you for all the kind words, especially Champion Flight, who really gave me the good dose of reality I needed. P.R. I see a lot of people asking about the aquarium, and at risk of doxing myself, there is a pretty famous aquarium in the UK called The Deep. At the very end, you walk through a tunnel that goes underneath the main fish tank, so it's quite immersive, I suppose. My husband explained the aquarium thing in that it's a bit like that. You go there and you observe the fishes, you even get a bit up close, but you never actually enter the water, get emotionally invested, or become a fish, gay, so it doesn't really count. It was a very bizarre analogy, and I pointed out it still makes no sense, and he just got more in a huff and how I just don't get it. And frankly, I still don't. Relevant comment? Commenter 1. Your husband isn't proposing a gaycation. He's proposing cheating on you with men while using magical thinking to pretend it doesn't count. The fact that he's planning this with his sister's husband makes it even more disturbing. His bizarre explanation about surrendering mind, body, and soul isn't straight man curiosity. It's someone desperately trying to justify exploring his sexuality while keeping his heterosexual marriage. His depression about not being able to go isn't about missing a vacation. It's about being forced to confront his sexuality without his convenient "what happens in Ibiza stays in Ibiza" excuse. His meltdown over not going shows how desperately he wants to avoid facing this reality. OOP. I read over this multiple times, and I guess the worst part is I know you're completely right. OOP should consider about the divorce. OOP, I wanted to avoid the divorce option, but I guess it's the only option, isn't it? Commenter 2. So this is just a thought, but I'm wondering if he was really planning on doing the gaycation, or if that was just a cover to try to get you to agree to it. What if the real plan was to get with women while he's down there? OP. That? I hadn't really thought of that, TBH. And now the thought terrifies me. From the way he was talking about men, the fact he had a poster for a gay orgy. I mean, it's one hell of a bluff, surely. Commenter 3. Tell him you are gonna have a straightcation while he's gone, and you are going to surrender mind, body, and soul to other men. Honest to God, if my husband proposed this to me, I'd use his time away to pack up, move out, and have divorce papers waiting for him. Update, November 28, 2024. Retrieved by Undit. So when I last posted, I'd contacted my husband to tell him he wouldn't be staying at home tonight and a bag would be waiting for him. As you can imagine, we argued. Quite badly. I won't go into the specific details, but no, I'm 100% on board with the fact at a minimum he's bi, might even be gay altogether. We've had arguments in the past, but I've genuinely never seen him have such a childish tantrum before, screaming about how I just don't understand the gaycation, absolutely despise that phrase now, and insinuating I'm actually homophobic because I refuse to allow him to participate in this cultural exchange with the gay community. A lot of you said to ask him if it'd be acceptable if the roles were in reverse, and I did say, would it be acceptable if I went and slept with other guys during that week? Like fucking clockwork, he was very angry and offended, saying it's completely different because a gaycation means nothing, and what happens on the gaycation stays on the gaycation, etc., so doesn't actually count. Whereas I'd just be straight-up cheating. Well, I turned it around on him. No, but you see what happens in Manchester stays in Manchester. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't count. It's like bird watching. And I think it got through to him. He went all quiet and then started crying, admitting the thought of me sleeping with another man is destroying his heart. But relationships need sacrifices, so agreed, while in tears, that when he goes on the gaycation, I'll get 1 week in Manchester to do whatever I want. He doesn't want me to, but that's fair in a twisted way, he supposed. I told him to get out of my house. Thankfully, he left without a fight. I know it's incredibly petty, but I also drained the joint bank account, legal in the UK, so he couldn't try to use it against me. About an hour later, I got rang up by his mum, my MIL, who just screamed and screamed at me about being a cheating *re, how I was horrible, what about the kids, etc. When I finally got my composure back, I just said, ask your son about the gaycation. Obviously, at first she got angry, but I said, no, just ask him about the gaycation. He'll explain, but she called me a fucking joke and hung up. Later on, getting into the evening, got another phone call from her in floods of tears. She was very apologetic, and I told her she doesn't need to be the one to apologize. She was so upset she put FIL on the phone, who, while he sounded calm, I could just sort of tell he was on the warpath. Again, very apologetic, and said he overheard that phrase, asked my husband, and husband initially said, no, it's nothing, before explaining how it's a modern thing men to do, etc., and gave them the same spiel about how what happens on the gaycation, men cannot resist the gaycation, how a man must surrender to the gaycation, etc. Raphael just said they told him to leave or they'd call the police. Don't care where he goes, but he wasn't staying there. Husband tried to call me while I was on the phone, but I just ignored it. And Phil just said he was so sorry for me and they have my corner in this, so that's one thing. Told them to be there for their daughter because it sounds like Bill is involved. Husband didn't tell them that. And Phil just said he had to go because he was so angry. Got a text from my husband after the phone call, which was all weirdly rambly, saying about how I'd abused the gaycation to destroy _his marriage and destroy his life, and again insinuated I, and his parents, was homophobic for doing such a thing. Told him we'll talk when he grows up and blocked his number. I took a day off work myself to have the locks changed this morning, so that's a 500 pounds gone, but whatever, at least I know he won't be coming back. I'm going to look into how to proceed with a divorce, and then we'll move from there. Oh, of course, there's also the brother-in-law, so I haven't yet met with SIL. She was in such a state and has taken this far, far worse than I have for reasons that'll be clear soon. We're going to maybe try tomorrow, but we did talk over the phone, and I eavesdropped on the conversation with her husband where she put her phone on speaker, and I went on mute. Her husband got home earlier. She made him come home, told him there was an emergency, and just said to him, "Can you please explain what a gaycation is?" She told me afterwards she was praying he'd look confused or just be like, "What?" or anything like that. But instead, he just sat her down and explained that a gaycation is a new thing where straight men go to gay hotspots and participate in gay sex acts. But it doesn't count because there's no investment, and because what happens on the gaycation stays on the gaycation. He said it's like writing down angry thoughts and putting them in a drawer. You never have to see them again. Whole time, Esil is in tears as he just calmly bats off the same points my husband did about how it doesn't count, and he even did the whole "it's impossible to resist, you must surrender or be destroyed" shit. I seriously think they must be speaking to a dominatrix or something. Are there even male doms? Because surely neither of them are that into this to actually make that up on their own. I really don't want to go into what was discussed for her sake, but it did become very apparent to me that the BIL is into sissy hypno-porn, and at times conflated that with the concept of a gaycation. There was this utterly surreal moment where SEL is just trying to wrap her head around this, while also in floods of tears, and he explains so genuinely, so matter-of-factly, that for most men, the gaycation is either a one-time or annual thing. But some men go on the gaycation for years, and others simply never return, because they use hypnosis and mind control to be totally feminized into a state of permanent pseudo-gayness. She said in disbelief, "Surely if you're taking it up the arse willingly because you want to, that makes you gay," and he said no, because that's the beauty of the gaycation. You can do all this gay stuff, but you don't interact with the wider gay life experience. She asked him if the sissy stuff is what he wanted, and he said, not on a long-term basis, and was adamant this is something all straight men do, but she wouldn't get it because she's a woman. Then there were more insinuations of homophobia. Well, that marriage is dead too, I suppose. The whole ordeal ended when she said to him he has a choice to make, and he said, No, he doesn't need to make this choice because the beauty of the gaycation is that it allows him to keep his marriage because it doesn't count. She said that's not the choice. The choice is whether he's leaving the house that night or she is. Only good thing he did was leave. Me and SIL spoke about it after that, and I'm just still utterly stunned. I understand she's gone to her parents for the support. What exactly did we do to have our lives destroyed in such an abrupt, bizarre, embarrassing way? For some advice, I'm going to look at devices and bank statements to see if I can find any definitive proof of cheating. After that, I suppose figure out how I tell the boys why their father won't be coming home. Edit. Spoke to other SIL, my husband's family is older sister, him, younger sister, original SEL, and gave her a skimmed-down version of it. She asked her husband, and thankfully he was deeply confused, but then mentioned about 2 years ago at a birthday party he was approached by my husband and BIL about signing up to some online boot camp around BDSM cross-dressing. He assumed they were taking the piss out of him, so told them to fuck off and never really thought of it again. The fact that this has been going on for that long is making me want to throw up. P.S. For the poster who said about divorce options, I'm actually going to look into adultery because plain and simple, that's what this is. Top comments. Commenter 1. Your husband and BL are deep in a shared delusion that's destroyed 2 families. Their identical talking points about surrender and destruction prove this was coordinated. They're not just planning to cheat, they're already involved in some online community that's warped their thinking. The fact that they both instantly launched into the same script about gaycations shows this isn't spontaneous. You made the right call draining the account and changing the locks. Their attempts to flip this into accusations of homophobia show how desperately they're trying to avoid responsibility. The identical language, the bizarre aquarium and bird-watching analogies, the talk of surrender or be destroyed. They're in some online echo chamber that's completely divorced from reality. When your husband agreed to let you have a Manchester week while crying, he revealed the whole lie. He knows exactly what this is. Cheating. He just wants permission to do it while denying you the same. The talk about hypnosis and permanent feminization reveals just how far this goes. Get a lawyer, protect your assets, and document everything. This will get worse before it gets better. Focus on protecting yourself and your children because they're too far gone in their shared fantasy to see the destruction they're causing. What a pathetic hill for 2 men to die on. They destroyed their marriages, traumatized their families, and alienated their parents, all while insisting none of it counts because they made up special rules about it. They want to cheat without consequences, and they found an online community that validates this fantasy. Step 15. I found out the actual reason my mom lost custody of me, and I don't know if I can ever look at her again. I was removed from my mother's care by DCFS when I was 11 years old due to allegations of SA posed against my stepfather. He was convicted of those crimes, but took a plea deal which meant he'd be out by the time I was 13. And from what I can remember, I don't even know that he served those 2 full years anyway. I was his primary victim. I don't remember how old I was when it started, but the earliest he admitted to was when I was 8. I don't know if my mom knew before DCFS got involved or if she found out afterwards, but now I don't think it would have mattered to her if she was aware. After being put into temporary custody of the state while the legal issues were sorted out, eventually I was placed with a relative and her husband, who later adopted me when it was clear my mother wouldn't be getting me back. My adoptive parents put me in therapy, got me the help I needed, did everything they could to make me feel safe again. Something they never prevented me from was speaking to my mother. I was always able to call or text her, and she was always allowed to come visit me, but I could never go and see her. I didn't really question it as a kid. I assumed it was some stipulation the courts made. I believed growing up that the reason my mom hadn't gotten me back was because of neglect, I guess. I assumed that the court thought it was partly her fault that I had been left unattended with that man so often, or that it took someone else noticing I was physically injured for something to be done about it. My adoptive parents never challenged these assumptions I had, and they always told me that they would never stop me from having a relationship with my mom, so long as that's what I wanted. Once I turned 18, my mom and I started talking more frequently, but we didn't see each other in person often. I never really thought much of it at first, but as the years went by, I started questioning the circumstances of my removal and subsequent adoption. I was confused as to why a woman with no prior issues with the law would have had her child taken from her in such a cut-and-dry way. I decided to ask my adoptive parents about it, and they very gently informed me that my mother was told that in order for her to regain custody of me, her husband, my abuser, would be required to leave the home and could not under any circumstances come near me, not only because he was an offender, but because I was the victim. My mother evidently could not meet these conditions, and so I was adopted by my relatives. When I worked up the courage to ask my mom if it was true, she didn't deny it. She told me she loved him, that he was a good man who made a mistake. They said that she could have her daughter, or she could stay with her husband, and so she chose him. She picked him over me. I don't even know what to do with the things I'm feeling now. I feel sick just thinking about it. She's my mother, and she knew what he did. He was convicted of sexually abusing her 11-year-old child, and she refused to leave him. For the past 12 years, she has willingly slept in a bed next to the man that assaulted her daughter. She has stayed married to the man who hurt me. My adoptive parents said they were advised by the therapist to let me figure it out in my own time, as my mother, despite picking that man over me, never made any move to have me near him again. She just wasn't willing to make him leave so that I could be with her. Evidently, the therapist thought it would be more detrimental in the long run to keep me from communicating with my mother entirely. None of that makes me feel better. The past 2 days have felt like a nightmare. I don't understand how she could stay with him. I don't understand why she chose a monster over her child. I'm trying to understand why my adoptive parents didn't tell me, but to be honest, I don't really understand their reasoning either. My mom has been texting me, but I haven't answered. I can't even think about her without feeling nauseous or so angry I want to cry, or both. My adoptive parents keep checking in on me, but I've only answered the phone for them because I don't want them to drive here out of concern. I really don't even know what to do anymore. Edit. I said this in a comment, but I thought I'd clarify here too. I'm not necessarily mad at my parents, I'm just overwhelmed with the reality of this situation. I don't know how I feel, but I know I need time to feel it. I am still in therapy, which is related to the abuse I experienced, so I do have a professional to rely on for guidance if I need it. And I don't think I'll ever be able to speak to my mother again. I can't get past this to forgive her or understand her reasoning, and I'm not sure I will ever want to try. Relevant comment? Commenter 1. Your adoptive parents consulted with medical professionals on how to deal with this. They took that advice because they didn't want to cause you more harm and because they love you. They were putting you first because you were their priority over their own feelings. How do I know that? Because I had a family member in a similar situation. It ripped them to pieces every time their child had contact with the parent that refused to protect them, knowing that child was being harmed repeatedly. Everything your adoptive parents did, they did out of love for you, no matter how hard it was on them. I will be honest, I don't understand people like your mother. Children should be protected at all costs. At the very least, you need time and distance from her. You may be able to forgive her, but don't trust her. If it were me, that relationship would be over. If you're not in counseling still, then please find counseling. This is a horrendous thing to deal with and just too hard for a person to do on their own. Sending good thoughts and wishes for your healing. OOP. Thank you. I really appreciate this perspective. I know they made choices for me based on what they thought would help me most in the end. This is just such an, I don't know, insane thing to try and process. I feel like I'm kind of losing it. I don't understand my mother either. I don't know how she's able to sleep at night knowing the things that man did. I can't wrap my mind around it. I do have a therapy appointment coming up soon, unrelated to this specific part of my situation. So I am going to have professional help in dealing with this. I'm just feeling really lost and overwhelmed right now. Commenter 2. One of the most disturbing things is that your mom calls her husband sexually assaulting you for years since you were 8 years old. A mistake. Her husband made a mistake, and that's a profound level of delusional belief. Beck, it was his decision to rape you for years, and only stopped Beck the authorities were involved. Sexual assault is not a mistake, it's a planned, premeditated decision. OP. I haven't been able to stop thinking about that part. The way she called it a mistake, said that he's a good man. She dismissed it as though he didn't make a conscious choice to go into my bedroom every night for 3+ years, like it was an accident or somehow unintentional. The good man she's married to is a predator who will be on the registry for the rest of his life for the things he did to me. I assumed my mother would have loved me enough to at least acknowledge the severity of what my stepfather had done. Evidently, I was wrong. Commenter 3. I understand how you feel about your bio mother, although our situations were different in many ways. About your adoptive parents, if it's any consolation, think about how hard it feels to deal with this. Do you think your younger self had the tools to healthily process this? I understand they might have been afraid of you developing issues while you were still at a critical age. Imagine you understood it was wrong. Kids tend to blame themselves. You might have thought it was something about you that made her choose him. Imagine you didn't understand it was wrong, or, worse, normalized it. Is that the idea of love you would like to have nowadays? Would you like to have grown under that weight? Your adoptive parents made a difficult choice in a situation in which you would always lose. It is difficult to know what the best course of action was, but I think they have proven they love you. You are worthy of love, of being chosen regardless of the amount of DNA you share or not share. That's a start. Update November 29th, 2024, 5 days later. Hello, I guess I wanted to write a little bit of an update. I didn't expect that many people to see the post. Honestly, I just needed to vent, and I didn't want to dump any of that on my friends or family. I had a therapy session earlier in the week, so I was able to bring this revelation up to my therapist, and we're going to work on ways to help me through processing this. That's obviously something that's going to take time, but I'm sure eventually I'll find a way to live with it, I guess. Right now, I still don't know how to unpack any of the feelings I have about this. I do understand why my adoptive parents went about it the way they did. In the moment, being given that information was just a lot to comprehend, deal with, and I felt betrayed. Not necessarily by them, but I think I did put some of those feelings onto them. That wasn't really fair, and I did try to apologize, but they aren't upset with me for it, and they felt I didn't have anything to be sorry for. They know firsthand how difficult this is for me, and they told me they were already expecting the reaction I had. My adoptive mom said that if she had been in my shoes, she would have been upset too, even if that feeling wasn't entirely directed at the right people. I did speak to them about how I felt, and I asked if they could tell me a little more about why they decided to handle it the way they did. They said that when they got custody of me and saw all the ways the trauma from my earlier childhood manifested, they wanted to do everything to make sure I would be able to grow up as cared for and well-adjusted as possible. When the therapist encouraged them not to tell me the truth or challenge my belief that I'd been removed from my mom because of neglect, they followed that advice. The doctors and my parents thought it best for me to understand my mother's choice on my own. They said that I had already been failed by so many adults in my life that were supposed to protect me, and that they didn't want to add to that list. My adoptive dad also mentioned wanting me to be able to enjoy at least part of my childhood without something like that revelation hanging over my head, which, looking back at all of it, I really appreciate. I don't remember much of my childhood up until I was put into my adoptive parents' custody, and what I can remember isn't great, but the childhood they gave me made up for that in spades. I know the choices my adoptive parents made for me were made with my best interest in mind. I love them, and I know everything they did was out of love for me too. I feel like people misinterpreted what I was saying in my last post about my feelings towards them, so I just wanted to clarify that part of it. Regarding my mother, I essentially told her that I wasn't interested in speaking again given everything I know now. I don't know how she took it because I've since blocked her number. My parents have agreed to reiterate that message for me if she contacts them, but I don't think she will. I'm never reaching out to her again. I can't do it. I think part of me is always going to be wondering why she did the things she did. But based on all the answers she's given to my questions so far, I'm not sure her honesty would be very helpful to me in the long run. Thank you for your words of encouragement and kindness. I really needed them in that moment, and I truly appreciate you all for it. Top comments. Commenter 1, proud. Proud of you. I'm glad everything worked out. Keep your mom out of your life. Commenter 2. Wow, you are strong. Your adoptive parents are great people. They did it out of love and what other experts thought was the right decision. Your bio mom doesn't seem like a good person. Story 16. New and final update. I'm the kid of one of those traveling RV families online and I hate them for it every day. My parents decided when I was only around 7 years old. Far too young to get an opinion on anything to pack us up and move into an RV to travel around the U.S. My dad works online and my mom makes content online. She's not huge by any means, but big enough that we get recognized sometimes and big enough that I've had a camera shoved in my face for as long as I can remember. For my privacy's sake, I won't say anything else on that, and I'm using a throwaway account because I've gotten enough attention already and I'm sick of it. I sleep in a tiny bunk bed that I outgrew years ago, and the other bunk is the only space I have to put anything I own. I don't even have a room, just a curtain. And thank God I'm an only child, or else I would have to share the small space I have already. I was homeschooled for most of my education, and then switched to online school at my own insistence for high school. I'm an 18-year-old girl. I don't have a single friend in person because the longest I've ever stayed anywhere is a month. I don't have a job and no way to get one because of not being stationary unless I find one online, which also mean I have no way to move out and get away from them. I've had conversations with them about all of this countless times, and they are so delusional and genuinely believe that a nomadic existence is the best way to live. So why would I never need anything else? I hate them for treating me like some pet they can just drag along in their plans rather than their child. I hate traveling. I don't like heat. I hate dealing with bugs, and I'm so sick of hiking. I can't wait for the day that I finally figure out a way to get away from them with their mornings, hikes, and cameras in my face. I've traveled around the U.S., yeah, but God forbid I want to have a normal life, go to college, or maybe even make some friends. That's asking too much. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter. I can't even imagine how lonely that must be. Do you have any way other family you could go stay with? OOP. Not that I know of, unfortunately. Currently, my plan is to try to figure out some making sort of income online and save up so I can get an apartment, and I'm talking with someone I've known online for a long time about maybe being roommates to help with costs for both of us. Commenter. Going to college is perhaps the easiest way out, but maybe not the cheapest. However, certainly a good step forward for multiple reasons. OOP. I'm definitely looking into it. But I'm worried about it because with the way I was homeschooled, I was very behind academically and struggled a lot in high school. I was just happy I was able to do an actual online high school program rather than homeschooling. Commenter. Ironically, if you were to start creating content about getting away from your hipster parents, you'd probably gain a lot of attention. OOP. Honestly, I've considered it just for the purpose of spreading awareness, but it didn't seem smart to me for a few reasons. Firstly, it didn't seem like a long-term solution. I don't think the content would be all that interesting once my story is told there isn't any other real content there. There is only so many times you can talk about the same thing without it getting repetitive and boring people. Plus, I would have to be in a stable position enough to feel comfortable talking about it and have an out just in case things went sideways. But more importantly, I've already had my life plastered onto the internet from such a young age. I don't think it's worth giving up the one aspect of my life that hasn't been published publicly. Top comment. Gumby Rocks. 1,800 Runaway provides a list of programs that will provide housing and supportive services. We help people like you every day. Update post, September 19, 2024, 9 days later. Hello. Barely over a week ago, I made a post talking about my very negative experience living in an RV with my parents for around 10 years now. Despite it being such a short time since I've posted it, a lot has changed for me since then. I don't know how many people here would be interested in an update on my situation, but I know quite a few people were very concerned and would probably appreciate an update, so here it is. Also, fair warning, this is a fairly lengthy post. I have a tendency to ramble, so there is sort of a TLDR at the end. I had a lot of people give me really helpful advice, resources, as well as even offers to try to help personally, some being questionable admittedly, but a majority being genuinely concerned wanting to try to help, and I very much appreciate that. It was slightly overwhelming, to be honest, and I ended up not responding to a lot of people, so you'll all have to forgive me for that. But even if I didn't respond much, I have been doing research on a lot of the information people gave me. Something that stood out to me was people asking if I had any family I could stay with, to which I had to respond, "Not that I know of," because I don't have anyone on my dad's side of the family, and my mom strictly no contact with her family. I did not know if they were alive, if they cut her off, if she cut them off, or even any details about them, and my mom had never wanted to talk about it. What information I did have was my mom's maiden name, which is pretty uncommon, and where she was born, which in terms of trying to find family can actually get you surprisingly far, I've come to realize. I've always had a slight hatred for the internet because I never had any choice in my life being public knowledge. And I know that once something is out there, it's out there. But for the first time, I'm actually really grateful for the internet. I was able to find some information on my mother's side of the family, and specifically was able to find my grandma's Facebook account, though it did take me some effort. After a lot of stressing on how to approach messaging her, if I even should, as well as potential outcomes, I messaged her explaining my mom's life, who I was, and my situation. I won't go into details onto why my grandma and my mom are no contact because that is not my story to share, but my grandma was appalled that she has a granddaughter she didn't even know about, and even more so the way in which her daughter raised me. I found out I have an aunt and an uncle, both of which my grandma told them about me and my situation. I've been in pretty much constant contact with all of them since just learning about each other. All of them want to help me get out of this living situation with my parents, and luckily with me being 18. Now it's actually possible. Again, I don't feel entirely comfortable going into details, but I have arrangements to go stay with my aunt who lives in a big city on the West Coast that had a lot of potential opportunities for me to start college or whatever I see fit, which I do plan on figuring out college happy to announce. My uncle has kids, but my aunt lives on her own and has a spare bedroom, which she has no problem letting me stay in for as long as necessary. I have a train ticket scheduled and purchased by my aunt and enough money to get to the station. I'm talking with my family, still feels weird to type currently, and trying to plan out the details like how or if I'm going to tell my parents. My mom doesn't know any information on where any of her family lives, so even if I were to tell my parents who I'm going to live with, they wouldn't know where I was specifically. Someone pointed out that if I did leave without telling them, I should leave a note or some form of proof that I left willingly, so if I do opt out of a conversation, I'm planning on either leaving a note or filming a video explaining my plans and why I'm leaving, which would be kind of ironic, wouldn't it? Regarding my mom filming, I've been very quiet around my parents and just refusing to talk when the camera is on, but neither one of them has mentioned it yet so far, luckily. Also, speaking of my mom's content, I would like to very much emphasize something quickly. Almost everyone was genuinely trying to help, but I had a few people replying trying to guess who I was. Luckily, the few I saw were basically torn to shreds and ended up deleting their comments. I also had a few people who messaged me privately, trying to make a guess at who I am, which at least that's not public, I guess. Although I can understand being curious, I posted anonymously with very little personal information for a reason. As I stated in my previous post, I've gotten enough attention and I'm very much sick of it. I would very much appreciate it if you guys can respect that. Even if you think you might know who I am, please, please, please don't make public guesses, and understand that I don't want this to be even more public information tied to my name. Very long story short, I have set plans to leave as well as a safe place to go with my aunt once I do, and very much appreciate people for being so willing to help. If you had told me not even 2 weeks ago that not only do I have a plan to move away from my parents, but contact with family members I didn't even know existed, I don't think I would have believed it. I'm currently not planning on making another post updating this, but wanted to let anyone who was concerned about me to not worry. Genuinely, thank you. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter, be careful, you don't really know your mom's family. I know it seems like an out. Just be careful. OP, I absolutely will be. Why my mom isn't in contact with them makes total sense, and none of it was their fault, plus they were able to send me evidence of that. But despite that, I definitely don't know them personally yet. My train out isn't scheduled immediately or anything, and I'm going to continue talking with them until then, but they do seem to be genuinely concerned and trustworthy. Plus, my aunt who I'll be staying with seems super nice, and we've already figured out that we have certain things in common. To the same commenter a bit later, OP. Oh, I forgot to mention earlier, as I said in the post, I'm planning on going to college, because that's a more obtainable option for me now. And I'm hoping to figure out living in dorms so realistically, I won't be staying with my aunt for that long once I work that out. Commenter. You can't really know they're being truthful. You should ask your mother why she's stopped communicating with them without telling her you started and get her side of the story. OOP. My mom 100% refuses to talk about her family. That's the reason I didn't have any contact with them in the first place and didn't even know about my aunt and uncle. But I'm confident they are being truthful about it because I was literally shown proof and some of it was literally court-ordered. Commenter. I do not recommend making a video. Your parents will use it for content. Write a note at most. Keep it simple, though. OOP. I realistically don't plan on filming a video. I think I was just feeling petty and upset thinking about it all, which just lead to thinking about drastic ideas of what I should do for telling my parents. Video definitely isn't a good idea if I don't just tell them myself. To a downvoted commenter, OOP. Question. Have you ever seen the Harry Potter movie scene where his room is the under the stairs and thought to yourself, wow, he actually has enough room to sit up in bed and a door? I have multiple times, actually. I'm very willing to abandon them to not have to feel like that anymore. Commenter, great analogy. Listen, could you do me a favor, please? Whatever the name of the town you're going to, call the local police or sheriff station on a non-emergency number, ask for the community liaison officer, and then briefly introduce yourself. Explain that you are 18, leaving a family situation which is not healthy, and going to stay with a relative you have not previously met. Give the officer your contact info, and tell him or her that you just want somebody that you trust to know where you are, and to please give you a wellness check in a couple of weeks, and that you will stop in and let them know how you are a couple of weeks following that. Agree on 2 innocent code words for your wellness/future conversations. One which, when dropped into conversation, means something is wrong, please get me out of here, and the other which means everything is just fine at present. Does this sound comfortable for you? OP. That's a really good idea, actually, thank you. New update post. November 25th, 2024, 2 months later. Hello, it's been a while, and I wanted to check in on here to hopefully give a few people some peace of mind. In my last update, I explained that I had gotten in contact with my mother's side of the family and had a place to go stay. I can proudly announce that I did it and am in a safe place now, totally away from my parents with absolutely zero contact. My aunt is an absolute angel, truly. She's so kind, and that's not even including my grandma and uncle. When I first got here, my aunt as well as my grandma took me out on a little shopping spree, bought me clothes, decor, and furniture for my room, because I have one of those now. And honestly, anything they thought I would need. My uncle has introduced me to my cousins. He has a younger son and a daughter who's very close in age to me, and I would say that we have become friends. I've been able to go out do a lot of fun little things with her. My aunt is currently helping me research colleges near us, but has reassured me I can do everything at my own pace, and there really is no rush, that her home will always have a spot for me. My aunt in general is such a cool person. She's someone I very quickly have started to look up to and have gotten close to. The more time we spend together, the more we learn that we actually have a lot in common. I'm just so grateful to all of them for being here and being so supportive. My aunt is also really helping me figure out who I am as an individual. For the first time, I'm in charge of my identity, what I share and who I share it with. I dyed and cut my hair, got a nickname, and have been exclusively going by it. My cousin is currently on journey to help me learn about what makeup I like. She's also introducing me to her favorite music groups as a self-proclaimed cringe but free K-pop fan. I have an entirely private Instagram account with all of 5 followers, and I plan on keeping it that way. I just feel like a normal teenage girl for once, and I've never felt happier. When I look in the mirror or just think about my life in general, I'm actually happy with it. I guess never realized that I wasn't comfortable in my identity as a person because honestly I had bigger things to worry about. This is all more than I could have ever imagined, and honestly, I have a hard time even processing it sometimes. I'm officially in therapy though, so maybe I can start working that as well as processing my past and how it plays into my identity in the future. My new therapist is actually the part of the reason I'm making this update. She thinks that posting this could be a good way to get closure to a certain extent. As sort of a way of acknowledging what I went through, but also moving on into my new life because I have my whole future ahead of me, one that I'm very excited to experience. So keeping that in mind, this will be my final update on here. I want to be able to enjoy my life and future while keeping my privacy. A lot of people really wanted me to share my story more, expose my past, but at least for now I've decided against that. It's my story, and I can choose to share it or not. For once I have control over who gets to know what information about me, and I'm not willing to give that up yet, but I suppose I don't know what the future holds. So I'm asking as nicely as possible that people please respect that. I absolutely appreciate the support and advice so many have given me. And just know I'm safe. I can honestly say that I'm happy. I'm planning out my future, what I want to do with my life, and who I am beside just a persona on camera. So, thank you so much for everything, and goodbye.